Powered by Riverside FM.
Sonic, how are you doing?
All right.
All right.
All
Yeah,
right.
our first guest, everyone.
He doesn't sound like that in this though. He's not quite a high-pitched little gremlin guy. He's kind of just a whiny sounding gremlin guy in this.
Well, you say whiny, but more specifically, what he sounds like is that he has a cold and his nose is bunged up.
No, that's Tails.
Oh, actually, yeah. Well, both of them kind of sound a little bit like it. Where Sonic just kind of sounds a little bit like this. Like, I gotta save the princess. But then Jill sounds like that, but even worse, like this.
You know, apparently running and cardiovascular exercise is meant to help, clear the nostrils, clear all that. So it's quite ironic. Maybe that's why he's so irritable in this film, because he keeps running, but his nose just doesn't clear at any point.
I assume it's full of bugs, like trucks on the highway when they drive for too long.
It's just he can't get his sinuses full of bugs, full of mucus, and it's like, damn, no matter. The running is making this better and worse, really.
No, very true.
I guess it doesn't help, that Sonic has very big eyes, so that just makes running quite dangerous.
It also doesn't help that he stands on planes. That's not going to be good for his sinuses.
Yeah. I mean, to correct you, Snake, he has very big eye.
Well, no, they've gone into this. They have confirmed it's two eyes, which I disagree with. I'm a Sonic eye truther. He has one eye. You can't...
He's a Cyclops.
I believe in empirical evidence, and empirically, that fucker has one eye.
Yeah, exactly. Where is the divide? And don't tell me that it's stylization, because it's like, well, this is the world that he lives in. These are the rules that it follows. And in this world, he has one eye. Because Tails has two very distinct eyes. As does Knuckles, actually, right?
Yeah, Knuckles does. He has very distinct eyes. Like in this one, they make him very distinct.
So do Amy and Shadow also have the one eye? Is that just the Shadow, the hedgehog design?
Shadow has a more prominent brow, I think, because he's constantly angry, which is funny.
Yeah.
Amy, I think, has the mono eye, right?
I think.
Yeah, no, Amy got the mono eye.
It's funny that I've been a fan of this series my whole life, but I can't conjure this just off the top of the dome. It's like, wait, did I have one eye?
Okay, but here's an important question.
Wait. Snake, are you saying that you have aphantasia, whatever it's called, but for Amy?
I have hedgehog-based aphantasia. Sorry, James. Facial aphasia. I have hedgehog-based facial aphasia.
But only specifically cartoon hedgehogs.
Actually, real hedgehogs. I can remember every face.
You look out into the garden. You're just like, Mom, Dad, look. It's just like, what? It's just a hedgehog. He's just like rapidly pointing to your copy of your 5 copies of Sonic Heroes.
Now, hang on. It's 4 copies of Sonic Heroes.
Well, I was hoping because the last time you told me it was 4, I was hoping that by now it'd be 5.
That they'd kind of split off asexually again and just become another copy.
Well, actually, so you have 4 physical copies. Do you also have like a ROM of it as well?
Oh my god. I do technically, therefore, have 5 copies of Sonic Heroes. You're right.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got them.
Hang on. Let me see if I've got an EU and a US, because that's happened before on Dolphin.
While you're having a look for that... Oh, sorry, Sweet. What were you saying?
No, I was going to tell Snake that
I have 6 copies of Sonic Heroes.
Oh, there we go. He has 2 teams of Sonic Heroes.
Oh my god, you genuinely do. You could have a Sonic Heroes race if you wanted
to. Well, I could.
And every time you swap character, you have to swap the version of the game.
Oh no. That considering there were those ROM hacks a few years ago where every time you jumped, you swapped like between Sonic 1, 2, and 3. I think Heroes, that should be a doddle for these genius game hackers out there to put together.
So how would it work? It would jump between Heroes Adventure 1 and 2? Or?
No, just what
it would jump between the different
Sonic
stories?
Heroes whenever you swap team. Actually, that's kind of lame because the levels are very similar. So maybe, when you jump, it should swap Sonic's Adventure 2 and Heroes, all on the GameCube versions.
Yeah.
Maybe Shadow as well, but that's... No, not Shadow.
God.
Bit too much.
Yeah, that's not a Sonic game, that's a Shadow game. And we're
That's a
talking
Shadow
about
game,
Shadow.
it doesn't count. It's a different thing.
That's right, we're not actually to Shadow yet. Even though what you were saying earlier, Snake, I'm gonna be the one that introduces this podcast just because it's normal at this point.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
All I'm gonna say is, hi folks, welcome to Movies We Like, the podcast where we talk about movies we like. Although, I would say that this episode is probably going to be more aptly mammals we like, because there is a movie that we will talk about, but I feel like probably the conversation is more likely going to go into who the movie is about, only because the movie itself, I mean, there is stuff to talk about, but not to the extent of the 3-hour fucking long Transformers movies where there's, a lot to pull out of it. This is, a little bit of a smoother drink. It's also animation as well, which is obviously a different tool set to dig into. But before we even do that, we should obviously introduce who's on the podcast, who I guess at this point are the two people who were on the last episodes of Movies We Like, which is Swede and Snake. Hello.
Hello.
Permanent guest Snake here with a movie.
Yeah, okay, let's start there. Guest Snake is back. And unlike last time, where it was me and Swede who decided to put the Transformers films onto you and basically use you as a test case to be like, okay, are these films any good or not? Let's get a perfect, squeaky clean, test subject who's never seen the Transformers films. Let's see how they react to them in the year 2024. Do these films hold up or not? This was the opposite. This was a thing that you suggested, so I suppose you'll probably be taking the lead more on this one, but I guess where we could start, and this will probably be the bulk of our conversation, because I think this also might be an interesting thing for people who listen to the podcast who are a fan of YouTube's Snake Era. They may wonder to themselves, where did your obsession with a little blue mammal called Sonic the Hedgehog begin? So,
now, I kind of disagree with it being called an obsession, if only because I've seen what an obsession with Sonic looks like, and it's so much more grand than what I have, which is...
That is true. You don't have the... Oh God, what's that character called from Danganronpa who had the room? Saskia or Sakia or whatever it is.
I mean, who had the room?
Yeah.
Wait. You're talking about the one who's a serial killer who's also...
No, I'm talking about in real life, there's a weeb who's so obsessed with this one character.
I know who you're talking about. Yes, the one who is super dedicated to the first killer in Danganronpa 1. And yes, someone has a whole room full of idols of her, and someone else has written a 300-page fucking book. God, how did I not get that on the room? Mine jumped to, there's once a game a locked room mystery rather than the utter madman who has dedicated themselves.
Well, why don't we? I was gonna say, how far does the Sonic fandom go in that case?
So
far.
It's funny, James, that you kind of said, this whole thing started as a joke of let's show Snake a weirdo these mainstream films, whereas this was me of Sonic weirdo showing two relatively normal people a cult object in this cult classic Sonic media that no one outside of the fandom has any reason to give a shit about, this one-off little movie from the 90s that's...
I'm gonna be honest, you calling me... Snake,
I think you're relatively normal.
No, Snake, I'm not. I literally have a full display of 20 Skeletors.
I was handing you a get out of jail free, and you decided to put yourself back in the cell.
Sweet, I think he was offering you kind of a gratitude. You should have. No. That's why I haven't opened my mouth. I'm just yep, relatively normal. I'm putting that on my LinkedIn right at the top.
I'm like Sonic. I don't live to pretend.
Okay, I'm proud of you, Sweet. I respect that. Yeah. But genuinely, I think it was just kind of appropriately enough for, the game series. It's just momentum. It was the first game I played and I just followed it. And then Sonic Adventure, got a Dreamcast as a kid, fucking hooked me from the moment. It just carried me non-stop fascination just with it. I do think it is just the first game kind of brainworm kind of gets you.
So you had the Mega Drive then growing up.
Yeah, I had a Mega Drive.
Interesting. Was that like a hand me down for you? Oh, was this kind of a thing? Because I'm not like super clued into kind of like games stuff in the 90s, and obviously I'm not expecting either of you two to be either, but like I do know that the Mega Drive was like the more popular console over in the UK, but I also imagine it was the thing of, because obviously they're not that I'm going to say what year you were born, but obviously it was after the Mega Drive had come out in the UK.
Yeah.
And I imagine at an age where you probably would have been old enough to appreciate it, it probably would have been
6 or 7 years old. Yeah, I've thought about that. I've thought about it a bunch. I've genuinely never asked how did my parents come to own a Mega Drive, because neither of my parents are very, tech-minded. They, It took them years to even get into mobile phones, and now that's really the only bit of tech they even bother to deal with.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I kind of know this answer for this, because I don't know, I watch and read a lot about 90s stuff, and specifically like I think it was just the case, so the Mega Drive, the better name, it came out in what, 89 in Japan.
I actually like the name Genesis more for the console. I don't know why, I just do.
No,
we can dig into which names we prefer more.
But yeah, it came out in like the early 90s, and
well, in the UK and the US, it had been out in Japan since like 88 or something, right?
Yeah, no, 89, I think.
And
or
it's
89,
funny as well, because the Master System did very well over here, and according to some sources, it's always kind of hard to pin this down because game discussions are often just fandom driven, and it's all a lot of, anecdotes and, I was there and this is the way it was. But a lot of British Sonic fans also, apparently, their childhood memories are born more from the 8-bit games than the 16-bit, so I'm kind of a weird outlier.
I can attest something to that in a second, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the thing I was going to say, like, after a while, I think the Mega Drive, I'm not falling for that snake, the Mega Drive...
It's not a trick, I just like the name more. I'm not pulling a game.
But no, I think it became like a budget option. So I can imagine your parents being like, oh, this kid our dear son to Snakerer wants a game console. Let's buy the cheap one.
I like that. There's no reason to believe that could be it. That, family wasn't the richest, but I do also find it funny, like, let's get the kid the budget option, because them getting me into video games really cost them a lot in the long run. So
well, I was
not
going to say, yeah, and plus, if it's your parents going, let's get in the budget option, one of the more like the smarter move would either be to get a Master System or just get you those like really shit Tiger Electronic games.
Oh, and I had a few of those Tiger Electronics.
Oh, it's true, but I don't know when Snake did get his Mega Drive.
Neither do I. Honestly, it was just there as long as I could remember.
It's something that you can. So like 6 years old is like as young as you can remember playing Sonic the Hedgehog. Then, but that would have put you kind of around.
Well, 5. I'm saying the game is 5 or 6 years old. I would have been like 3 or 4.
Oh, that young.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, you said you weren't going to say when I was born, but I'll just say I was born in '93. So the game the game Sonic 1 would have been
2 years old.
Yeah, 2 years old when I was born. Yeah. So yeah, it was. I was playing. You know what? Maybe this explains why I'm more interested in older games, because from the very moment as like the first game I played was already out of fashion by the time I'd played it.
Snake, eternally out of fashion.
When you're not in the debate, when you're a literal 3 or 4 year old, you don't give a shit. It's just
true.
Yeah. See, I don't know. I'm waiting for because obviously now it's all the Gen Alphas that are making videos about like gaming was better when I was 10, which was only 5 years ago, and they're talking about shit like fucking Warzone 1.0, and it's like, what the hell are you talking?
I kind of had a first wave. I had a first wave hit of this, which I've probably told the story before, but yeah, I made a video on the bizarre themes of Minecraft Story Mode, talking about how its storytelling is weird and how it kind of has weird.
I do remember this.
Yeah, I remember.
And then 5 years later, kids who grew up with a game who they're not in this fucking cultural context I was when I was critiquing it as an adult. And, I don't think they're wrong for going like, actually, I like this. It's like, yeah, this game hit you at the exact right point. You're not going to see it as cynically as I do. And actually, I think it'd be kind of cruel to try and rip that away from you. Even if on some level you're probably going to come to realize, oh, this was a commercial product and a bit weird. But also then, people who knew the Telltale writer stuff, apparently people writing Minecraft Story Mode they were genuinely into it. It wasn't cynical to them, which is
interesting. Well, they were genuinely into the Minecraft lore.
I think part of it was, and looking back, it makes kind of sense because Minecraft has no real story besides Ender Dragon. It kind of is just a license to make a story out. You just need to throw in some Minecrafty elements, and so it is kind of their baby. And I can kind of understand, therefore, getting into it because it's like, I'm sorry to say this, I'm sorry to drag it to Sonic in this way, and I'm actually not making a joke, but it's kind of like Ken Penders wanted to tell his own story, and that's why he inserted so many original fucking Echidna characters, because when he was writing it, there was basically nothing about the Echidnas, and he could just do whatever he wanted. He just crowbarred Sonic into, well, I want to tell this story, here's my opening, and it's kind of, it's not kind of, it's incredibly self-serving, but
yeah,
but nobody cared at the time. Yeah, nobody cared at the time.
No,
people care.
I always kind of think of it a little bit of like when children are kind of depicted playing toys in like television and stuff, they always seem to have this kind of like internal world when they play with toys where it's like, if you're playing with a toy town, you'll go, oh, this is Mrs. Bond the baker. She's off to the zoo today with her child, And I don't really feel like... I'm saying this, but it's kind of like, well, what's your point of reference? Myself. I don't feel like when I was a child, I used to come up with those little micro-narratives with stuff. Oftentimes, it was either based on, if it was like an action figure or whatever, it would usually be like, well, I'm just picking up where, the TV show or whatever left off. Not that I really played a lot with action figures. It was mostly like Lego and stuff.
I was a real action figure kid, and I think from like the ages of 6 to like 8, I had a long fucking ongoing narrative with them, which is just totally gone now.
Okay.
But I just spent a lot of time like making up stories, and the worst I think was just like I would play a lot of Super Smash Brothers by myself because none of my friends like Super Smash Brothers. I was the only one.
Sure.
I would just make up a story mode in my head between fights.
Oh yeah, no, I kind of did that too when I was a kid. Like when I played Smash, like I always liked fighting games in that suddenly these characters, why are they fighting? What's the little narrative?
It's a fucking miracle I didn't become a fan fiction writer.
No, that is surprising
because by the grace of God.
Because I kind of started getting into that, but like when I was about like 9 or so, so maybe I might just be a bit of a like developer, but like I don't remember being like a young child and kind of being like, creating these sort of like little micro narratives. But I get exactly what you mean. Like I think that's kind of an appeal to like Minecraft Story Mode is exactly that. It's basically the Lego movie where you go, well, there's no real story or whatever, so I'm going to imagine the story of the people who are already in Minecraft, like the villagers and the creepers and the pigs, and what do they do day to day?
And also just working the multiplayer aspect, all the characters.
Yeah, true. And I guess Sonic kind of has a little bit of that element as well. I guess maybe we'll get into that before we talk about the film.
I actually
proper.
We won't get into the film just yet, but that's kind of that's something I wanted to bring up, which we'll get into, but. This movie that we're going to get into, it comes out in 1996, the Sonic OVA, released internationally in 1999. But talking about interpreting characters, reinterpreting and adding your own narrative onto things, the moment Sonic was created, Japan and the USA had a different origin story. They had a different character bible. By 1993, Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog come out, which is basically a Looney Tunes cartoon with Sonic. 1994... Sonic Sat AM comes out, which is kind of a darker, grittier take. And you can kind of already see that by the time it comes out, I think Sonic CD and Knuckles Chaotix exists, and then Sonic 2 also exists, and Waku Waku Patrol Car. Basically, I'm saying, I know this is a very odd thing, but I'm going with it. Sonic is in this weird thing where it's like both super child-friendly, but also people trying to be very gritty with the imagery of it. And there's like... It immediately hits with like a shotgun spread of tones of like, no one is quite sure what this character is. Is he on a weird Earth, or is he on planet Mobius? This film has its own little answer to that. And it's funny that I think from moment one, this franchise was kind of doomed to not have a unified fan base because it had no consistent like imagery or tone.
I have kind of a grander thesis about maybe why that is, but before we get into that, Sweet, have you got any particular history with Sonic the Hedgehog? Because I feel like talking to you over the years, not particularly, like, you're kind of like, I wouldn't even call it a fascination with Sonic, but I guess like your kind of interest in Sonic sort of mostly began with when you met Snake, really.
No, actually.
Okay, right.
Actually,
I
no.
think there is a meeting point which is to do with Sonic, but Sonic is
Yeah.
like secondary, tertiary to that.
Oh yeah, no. So basically, my story with Sonic actually starts really early. I don't remember which year it is, but the first Sonic game I ever get in contact with, I think the first Sonic media was actually Sonic the Hedgehog, like the Looney Tunes show. Adventures. Right. I think that was legit my first introduction with Sonic. But I don't really remember, but I just remember seeing that too. But the actual real interaction was, little known fact, the PC version of Sonic 3.
Hey, I had that too. The one with the crappy music.
Yeah, and
you say crappy music a lot. Apparently, weren't a lot of those like early prototype versions of
they were. And fun fact about that prototype music, which probably known to any Sonic fan listening who's watched a Cybershell video, but in a beta discovered, quite recently in the last couple years, they heard Genesis renditions of those crappy songs, and on a Genesis, they sound pretty good. So, yeah, odd.
What is it with Sega butchering MIDI files between things? Because the same thing happened with Sonic Chronicles for the DS. All that music was composed in MIDI. And when they brought it into apparently it sounded absolutely fine on the workstations. When they brought it into the game, it sounded completely fucked, and they were so far along in development they couldn't fix it.
So that's why it sounds like that.
Or was that BioWare's fault?
I think it was a bit of both because I don't think BioWare did the music in house. So.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
But that game has. You mentioned
Chronicles has
earlier.
a whole lot of issues. 10 years ago, I decided to replay the whole Sonic series and basically get every game I missed. I gave up on 2 games. Well, 3 if we include Riders, which I kind of don't. But one of them was Rivals, and the other one was Sonic Chronicles, because they are that fucking boring.
I was going to say, Rivals is the PSP game, right?
Yeah, it's a PSP, versus Racer or something like that.
Oh, God, yeah.
Sorry, Sweet, I interrupted.
I had my story there. But no, basically, I kind of had an on and off relationship with no.
Right. An on and off relationship was like
it's kind of weird. I grew up, so basically I played Sonic 3, and then I watched the Sonic X. Was really when Sonic was always there, but Sonic X was I started. Hey, Sonic, yeah, and then I found the fateful found. I found the PC version of Sonic Adventure DX.
Oh, great. The best version. The best way to play.
And it fucking sucked. I played that thing with a keyboard.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, so an even worse way to play potentially the worst version of Adventure.
So basically, so far, my track record with these fucking games. You wanna know what I also found that day? Shortly after? Sonic Heroes PC version.
Oh, fuck.
Which years on, you would go on to play co-op, kind of.
Yeah.
No, was it the PC version or was it
we played the GameCube version with a keyboard, so
that's right. We did play with the Christ, I forgot.
So who's to say what version we played?
Yeah, but so that's my relationship with Sonic has just been fraught with people are like, oh, this game is bad. Me, no, I just play the worst versions, and then I end up actually getting playing proper Sonic games on the proper consoles.
I think yesterday you bought Sonic 06 because the Xbox Live Marketplace is dying on 360.
Yeah.
I ended up watching more Sonic Let's Plays and stuff like that. So that's what
you saying that your first exposure to the wacky Sonic cartoon feels incredibly perfect, considering when I met you I was just kind of a bit like, oh, this is a man who has been shaped by YouTube poops.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so
I just can't hear certain words. I just can't I hear them and I just get yes, YouTube poop.
You hear somebody saying snooping around as usual, and it you get activated the Manchurian Candidate.
Oh, I know, yeah. Sometimes I roll my arse.
I don't know why, but one of my first time, I remember one of the earliest cases of me feeling like real sympathy for a fucking cartoon character, or just kind of anything, was an episode of fucking Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog where Eggman's plan fails. He's on the phone to his mum, crying his eyes out over his failure. And I was just there as a kid, like, man, this is sad. I'm watching a grown man crying. I feel bad.
It's like the fact that I imagine in the cartoon they're playing like
they're playing it for laughs.
music in
It's
the
like
back.
the goofiest, like it's a joke, but you get like, this is kind of depressing. I don't like watch. It's kind of sad watching a grown man.
That was your
cry.
first. That was your first exposure to seeing like sadness rendered.
And then I watched 40 Towers, and every episode was like, man, just let Basil 40 have his way, you know?
So
I thought you were gonna say, just let Basil 40 cry. It's fine. He doesn't have to be stiff up the lip all the time. Just let him show
if
his
he lets
emotions.
it all out, maybe he'll feel better.
Yeah, no, so Snake, does this mean like every time you see like a scene, like a sad scene of a man crying in a movie, you're like, it should have
Just
that
like
soundtrack.
Eggman.
It's so good. You want to know a fun fact about that show?
Sure.
The lead animator basically described, I think it was the lead animator or lead designer, he basically described Eggman as animation's sexiest fat man.
I'm not going to argue.
He does move in funny ways.
That was the joke. That was the joke for a lot of times. Like they would just book Eggman like he thinks he is fantastic, he's perfect, he's sexy. So hence animation's sexiest fat man.
Character-wise, I would say the thing that he reminds me most of is like, Sweet, have you ever seen Cow and Chicken?
Yeah, I grew up watching Cow and Chicken.
Yeah, he's the devil from Cow and Chicken, where he's just this like big. I was about to say gay, but that's not quite right. Just a big, incredibly camp man who's like constantly shoving his ass out, and he's like, that's kind of Dr. Eggman. Yeah.
Who is either a feminist or a womanizer, depending on what side you take in the dumbest argument that was ever in Sonic fandom, which is a bizarre one. That's a high bar to clear, is having the dumbest argument.
My stance is both. He's both at once.
He's a feminist and a woman. So, okay, it's been a few years since I've been in any way interested in this, and even then it was a passing one, was like, the Sonic Heroes bio calls Eggman a feminist.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even at best, that's just meant to be a bit of a joke characterization of.
Well, wasn't the thing that it was people reckon it was a mistranslation?
Yeah, a mistranslation of womanizer, which I don't actually know, but I find like either way, that's a fucking odd one. But all right.
I mean, feminist is kind of funny, but like womanizer, that conjures a world of Sonic the Hedgehog that you don't really see, because that assumes that there's like women around that you can womanize, basically.
Well, Sonic 06 gets into it, but the question is, to throw out there, do you think that Eggman possesses like unassailable riz?
Oh, absolutely. That man has so much confidence.
I feel like James is conjuring the sharpest way to say no.
Moving on.
Okay, I do want to move on. I do actually think because we've talked about our histories with Sonic, but I think yours. Is interesting.
So here's the and this is the thing I was gonna say was that like I don't feel like I ever really gave much thought to Sonic the Hedgehog outside of just him being in video games until meeting you two, where it kind of feels like a kind of a common currency of your friendship was like relaying weird Sonic facts and just kind of like having that in the knowledge base, which isn't a bad thing. Like, I mean, that is kind of what a lot of like friendships are based on, is sort of like, those in jokes that you have with people and kind of like weird bits of esoterica that you get
I think to start with, I was a person who liked Sonic, who knew all this weird Sonic shit and found it funny, and Swede was someone who disliked Sonic, who knew all this weird Sonic shit and found it funny.
Like it is kind of like weirdly Ebony and Ivory of just like, somebody who loves Sonic and somebody who kind of, I mean, hate might be a bit of a strong word, but just doesn't get Sonic, I guess.
No,
but the fact that you have all this Sonic lore, I find so interesting.
It's an interesting franchise. Like, it is like genuinely like a kind of interesting. It just has spawned so much weird shit.
I think, whether or not you like or dislike it, I think at the least it's you can't not find it fascinating because it's so fucking out there. Like, what is this? It's like, how old is Sonic now? 1991, like what? 35
He's the same age as me. He's 30. He's 33.
So 33 years of like constant reinvention, commercial successes and failures, and like what 10 different universes. None of them fully sticking the landing. It's great. I love it. I love how fucking eclectic it is, and how I kind of love how every game seems to possess a confidence of exactly what it is, but you look at it as a whole and it's like, you're the most uncertain goddamn thing going in the universe.
So I was going to say, like, I feel that through knowing you two, I feel like I'm in, like, I'm Alice through the looking glass of kind of knowing more about Sonic the Hedgehog that I ever would have beforehand. Because my history with the games are two things, which is when I was about... So this might have been around Sonic Adventure, maybe just a little bit before. When I was in primary school, I went over the house of a boy called Carl Phillips, who had a Sega Master System. And he said, "Do you want to?" He was, because I was like, game head of this one, because I think I had a Game Boy Color or something like that, and so I was like, "Well, I just love video games. And I guess I can dig into that a little bit." But like, he was like, "Yeah, no, do you want to see the Master System?" I was like, "Yeah, absolutely. I have no idea what this thing is." And he had the Master version of Sonic the Hedgehog on it. And I think it's exactly what you said, which is that a lot of people don't kind of like realize that, kind of during this age, it wasn't really a thing of, but I guess it's always been this case. Like, you don't really have to have like the cutting edge technology all the time. Stuff does come down in price. And for the most part, you can still go out and buy like the older consoles. Not so much now, but that's just kind of more the fact of like brick and mortar doesn't really exist anymore for this kind of stuff. And especially in the last few years of like Game Station and Game, they only focused on the new stuff. Like you could barely, if you were gonna, and if you want to get secondhand now, you have to go through resellers like CX and whatever, where I feel like there's a slight level of scumminess to it, which I feel puts off normal people. I feel like CEX is only really aimed at kind of collectors or like, I don't know, like I feel like if you go into CEX, you kind of you're not really going into just to peruse and go like, oh, I just want to buy some films, so I'm going to do it at CEX. I feel like you go with a game plan. Like, do I sound mental? Or do you? I'm
going to say, James. Here's the thing. I don't know.
Yeah,
if you
I know
sound
that you
mental,
do
but
that.
I'm disagreeing with everything you say. But then I'm the weirdo who goes in there looking for weird PS2 games and just hoping for a lucky find. So, I can't pretend for a second to be the normal one.
Well, right, but when I say, when you say disagree, in what way? Like, as in you reckon that people do go...
it's just a boring answer, but I just don't assume people's intent for working in CX, but I also can't say I think you're wrong, because I think you're probably more tuned into, I can understand that someone would go in with like, well, I want this, CEX will probably have it.
Well, I was going to say, and I guess the only reason I say that is mostly just because of the fact that the price of physical media of secondhand physical media has gone up so
really
much.
Bad. It's disgusting. So I got my copy of Persona 4 for the PS2 in like 2012, 2013. Right. 15 quid. And I was like, 15 quid for a PS2 game? I know not many people have resold this, but that's disgusting. Someone on my Discord recently talking about, man, got a bargain. Persona 4 for 45 quid on the PS2. And I'm like, that's bad. We're in a bad place.
So that's what I mean.
Collectors and speculators have ruined this.
No, this is where I don't think I'm mental in what I'm saying of, there used to be kind of about maybe 10 years ago, buying older stuff was just kind of more available and it was cheaper. It was like a genuine alternative to like just, buying the newest thing. Whereas now in CEX, because game prices for older stuff is now so expensive, it is kind of more of a focus thing of, well, I'm going in there because I want to specifically build a PS4 collection. Whereas I feel like most people who just want to buy cheap games, they might still use CEX because there's like a lot of Switch stuff in there which might be marked down if it's still relatively recent. But they're not looking at like PS2 stuff and going, oh yeah, a £100 copy of Ico. Yeah, that'd be fun for me and the kiddies.
I'm the one weirdo. That said, I was oh god, I was up in Finchley the other day. Finchley, that's got a good PS2 collection at the CEX. That's my recommendation for Finchley.
There you go. So fans of older games, Finchley for older PS2 games.
Meanwhile, I think not Cloak and Well. Wolfenstow has a good PC collection. I'm a saddo who knows where to look for what things at specific CEXs. So that's why, James, I can't argue with you because I know I've got a warped understanding of CEX.
No, that's true. And in fairness, I don't quiz. I don't go into CEX and go, why are you here? Why are you buying stuff from CEX? Because
maybe we should be running some interviews on the streets.
No, but that's just my general vibe, just from kind of the secondhand stuff over the years, and just from the fact that I occasionally go into CEX, but it's mostly to buy cheap hardware, and it is because it's less because it's old and more just the fact that I want to get maybe a lavalier or a webcam or something, but I don't want to pay full price. Has somebody got something relatively decent at CEX? All of that being said, you don't have now you had back when the Mega Drive was out, or I guess at this point it would have been the Saturn, although that didn't do super well in the UK.
No, my best mate had a Saturn, and the only game he'll ever talk about for it was Guardian Heroes.
Yeah, which I've heard is good. Speaking of which, Swede, in the XBLA, now that's closing down. The version of Guardian Heroes on that is pretty good.
Grab Guardian Heroes. How do I not
grab
say
it right
grab Guardian
now,
Heroes
while
HD? It is good. It's good.
It is good.
I'll open a tab for it.
Okay. But yeah, so you don't really have this thing now of and again, he had this version of Sonic the Hedgehog that I had never really seen before, and at this point, the only console and game that I had played was Super Mario 64. And that was just purely a thing of... Because Nintendo stuff has never done well in the UK for two reasons. One, for the longest time, they only sold them from Boots and Dixons. And two, they were really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But my dad being a relatively big wig at British Telecom at the time, and also a massive nerd who would read Macworld and be like, okay, what's hot? What's coming up? Saw that the N64 was this is the genuine future of games. Sure, there is some 3D on the PlayStation, but not to the extent of what Nintendo's doing. And they've invented this new controller interface that's going to change computers forever. And he's like, damn, I got to get one of these. And so Christmas 96, 5 years old, Super Mario 64, plug it in, doesn't work. Have to take it to Dixon's, have to swap it for a different one. And that was my recollection was then seeing that the price of fucking N64 games were £100 a pop. I didn't have a lot of N64 games for a long time.
What? They were that bad? I don't even remember this.
Oh, yeah, no, I vividly remember N64 games in the UK were so heavily marked up. Whenever people say that gaming is it was better back then, No, not at all. When the GameCube came out and you had reasonable prices of £40, that was when games were good. So it was mostly I had Super Mario 64, and then I had a hand-me-down Game Boy, which had you could just buy game cartridges super cheap. But I had Tetris and Super Mario Land, which kind of did me well for a long time. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't super clued into game stuff. But then a famous date, the 9th of September. 1999, 9/9/99, when the Dreamcast came out, my dad was doing business up in Liverpool, and once again, being the guy that he was, where they were this is the future of games, this is 128 bits, this is you can connect to the internet, it has Windows in it, it's going to change the game. He brings the Dreamcast home with a copy of Sonic Adventure. So my only recollection for who this little guy was he was a little blue guy who ran along on bridges and stuff, but hey, now he's 3D like Super Mario 64, so let's see what this is. And it was probably one of the first games that I played that had voice acting in it, it had little cutscenes. I liked the fact that it had the Mario 64 thing of there was a big hub that let you visit different levels, but this had a little bit more cohesion to it, where it wasn't just a fantasy castle with paintings. You got on the train and you went to different biomes and stuff. I was this is neat. And kind of already started to plant the seeds in my head of eventually what GTA 3 pays off of you have the entirety of a fake New York city to kind of go around and do as you please in. And I was just quite enamored with it, but not to the extent of I felt I kind of became obsessed with it. I was just kind of more this is interesting. And I the different stories and the different kinds of gameplay in it and stuff like that. And then the GBA came out and there was like Sonic Advance. And I was like, okay, neat. So I'm going to give this a go. And it was a different kind of game. And at this point, I was reading the magazines and they were saying, this is, hey, forget about adventure. This is a throwback to classic Sonics that used to be on the Mega Drive. So I had that awareness at that point. But I was playing it through this kind of filtered Dimps version of it. And then that was just kind of it for a while. And then when I eventually got more online, then just started learning kind of more about Sonic the Hedgehog stuff, it was '06. And that was
no.
and it was literally, yeah, I know, you just said oh no, because I think this is also kind of timely because you're currently writing about Sonic stuff at the moment.
Yeah, I've been studying it a lot, and I do think Sonic 06 had this weird time-traveling blowback where it's like, oh, actually 3D Sonic was never good because this game, like, basically changed the... This game was so bad, it, like, rewrote the narrative on what 3D Sonic... Like, and here's the thing, I'm not going to pretend that 3D Sonic didn't have blowback before, but I think this just emboldened it and basically made all of it true in retrospect, so now it was always the story.
I'd go even a little bit further, because I was reading Destructoid at the time, and I think that the impact of '06, following on from Shadow, was so much... It was just became the narrative that Sonic in general was never good. Like, going back to the Mega Drive games, which they all said... Because, again, it was funny because I kind of reflected on it a little bit because I had played the 2D Marios then on the GBA and liked them. And so I was coming from the same kind of place that they were, which was like, Sonic was bad. The only reason that people liked him was because, like, the Sega Mega Drive was the cheaper option, blah, blah, blah. But he's worse compared to Mario. And I'd go back and I'd play these 2D Sonic games, and because I'm like a 15-year-old who's like, one ear and out the other, I'm not really like gelling with them. Like, because I'm going, these don't play like Mario, so I don't really get it. And I wouldn't say that like, and then from then on, I never liked Sonic the Hedgehog. I think it was just kind of more of a thing of, oh, well, old games are old games, and, games then eventually get better. Because again, I like the GBA ones. I like Rush, which had come out like the year before Sonic 06 anyways. So, yeah, I've always just kind of had this sort of tepid thing with him of just like, well, at this point, he's kind of, sort of a Mario thing of like, they'll keep making these games, but with Sonic, they'll always kind of keep playing with the formula of it because it's a bit like they're trying to tune a radio of, okay, well, what works? Because then Unleashed comes out, and like I'm in secondary school at this point. I go over a guy's house who's like, you need to see this game, it's incredible. And I'm like being a shitty teenager and cracking jokes because it's the level where you're just... What's the ice level in Unleashed where the whale turns up? Halaska or whatever, yeah.
Is this the 360 version, by the way?
Yeah, it is the 360 version, yeah. And I'm just cracking and saying, this is just automated as fuck, you don't have to do anything.
See, the thing is, teenage you is right, but also it's automated as fuck and it's really cool. But
and that's the thing, that's the thing of growing older and, hindsight and whatever of just like, the thing with Sonic is that he's not worse than Mario. He's a completely different character with completely different physics.
That's something I've been grappling with lately with like looking at a lot of old reviews and the way people talk about games. I do think... God, we'll get to the film eventually, but I'm just testing out here.
The film's important to all of this. We're building
we'll come. Here. Yeah, but it's like I do think, and it comes from my distaste with genre arguments as well. But I think we set a standard for something in our heads, and the standard is just the standard, and everything else is judged against it. So things can't be different. They're better or they're worse. They're doing it wrong. They get off base. Where it's like, Sonic isn't worse than Mario. He's different than Mario. He takes a different design philosophy, a different playing philosophy. And yeah, you get into the weeds of something like that, and you're like, man, Sonic does stuff wrong. And it's like, no, he does it differently. You've just got to, you can't go in with your preconceptions. You've got to approach this as its own thing.
Yeah, when I mean, you know about this, and I guess I can go into this a little bit because this will eventually morph into something else. But like, I wrote like a really long video, like about a year.
That's why I brought up your history, because I know.
Yeah, which was, and again, like this was the thing as well, was that we met each other through like a video Discord, and I think the first video of mine that you saw was the one that I made about Sonic Adventure.
Yeah, and it was purely that kind just of person where, because I'm a Sonic guy, when I'm looking at someone new, if I see they have a Sonic video, that's like, all right, that's click number 1 because I got to know.
See, that's funny because
I think about Sonic.
Because I'm shitty like everybody else. Where it's like, what's the most popular video? Watching that one first. Whereas what's their Sonic video? I want to see.
I want to see the Sonic views.
The more I talk and I'm thinking about what I'm saying, the more I'm realizing this is abnormal.
No, I think this is cute though. But I think it's because you have a. I don't want to say, I was about to say you have a relationship with Sonic the Hedgehog, but that is the absolute wrong terminology there.
I think I'll admit to this, I have like a terminal distrust of the popular, which if it's not Sonic, it will therefore just filter down to what topic am I most interested in, or what's their kind of middling, like, it will probably just be what video is just specifically interested me, because it is kind of a hipsterish distrust of the popular, which I don't think is a superiority thing. I think that's just how I'm fucking wired.
No, and I think with Sonic, there's obviously, like, I'm sure that you probably had this where you've met a new video creator and then you've gone, right, have they made a Sonic video? And have they made the obvious one of just like, Sonic is shit, here's how I'd fix it, or Sonic's always been shit kind of thing, or like it's dunking on 06 or Colors or something like that, I guess.
It is a fun barometer as well, and it's funny you mentioned 3 different games where that could be the barometer, because again, that's what's so fun about the series, is because each game is so different, there will be one that just sticks in someone's craw if they give even a slightest bit of a shit about the series.
That is true. That is kind of true.
Yeah, like, because it's so inconsistent but so varied that there will just be that one game that's you think no one gives a shit about, but there's one guy out there who really
There's always
does.
a shooter for the different games in the series. Like, I've always been not vocal, but I've always quite liked Lost World, which is that is a minority opinion, because
that is a minority opinion. I think because the more I think about it, like, Lost World just kind of falls through the cracks in terms of popular discussion.
Yeah, no, you've said before, like, you play it and it's boring, but as in it falls through the cracks of discourse, I guess.
Oh, kind of both in my case. I think it's so uncertain. Like, it doesn't have a fun core gameplay, and every variation on it is somehow like, okay, just get back to the crap you were doing.
I have a take on it, which I guess I'll get to that in a second. But I guess I just kind of wanted to wrap up my sort of thing of like, I sort of had to learn to kind of, I guess, like the Sonic series, I guess, I think, because I made that video on Adventure, and it was mostly talking about, like, I just like the fact that it was kind of like a different sampling menu of different, like, gameplay styles, and it was mostly just me saying, well, I like the Knuckles gameplay because, like, it reminds me a lot of Mario 64, but it's tighter
I hate
and a
the
lot
fact
smarter.
I have to admit a hypocrisy immediately, because that's kind of also what I like about Adventure, but I'm condemning Lost World for it.
No. I mean, Lost World's a completely different. Well,
yeah, but
Lost
there
World,
is like a baseline hypocrisy, and like something I find so appealing about Adventures is so, like, it's doing everything, but then so's Lost World, really. Fuck.
Yeah, but so it's just kind of become a thing of just like, and then getting into video essay communities and stuff, you do meet the people who are like, they're like shooters for certain like genres and different games. Like, you meet Paper Mario fans, and it turns out that they actually only like one Paper Mario game, or like, the weirdest thing for me was like, because I've always liked the Mario games, like, even as a kid, like, I have the story of like, because I always feel like the GameCube's a failure to me, just because of the fact that when I had it as a kid, I just always thought it was a disappointment. And I remember getting Mario Sunshine like in October when it came out. It was meant to be a game that came out in the summer, but it was so like rushed to try and like get it done. It eventually came out in October, and I remember playing it, and I just remember crying and telling my mum that I'm having a really bad time with this. And it's just because it's very frustrating. And I think it's like when you're used to, I mean, it's the joke in is that like, oh, when you're used to privilege, anything else feels like, living in poverty or whatever.
Yeah,
but it wasn't like that.
This is why, if you're going to be a game critic, you have to play some genuine.
You have to play other
games.
stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Granted,
at the time, I was 10.
I know.
I feel like
I'm not going to put shade on a 10-year-old for not.
I will.
A game they don't play some real crap, you sissy.
Sweetest traveling back in time to bully 10 years.
Oh, you're crying over a video game, eh?
I see a
Oh, you think
10-year-old
this is shit? Play this, and you make me play like I don't know, like Tack and the Power is usual.
I see
or
like a
fucking Big
10-year-old
Rigs.
crying about a game they don't like, and I'm just like, right, here's a Steam account with Postal free. Get back to
Yeah,
me.
you want to play shit? Play Postal free. You entitled brat. Fuck
Yeah. You think this is bad? Yeah, you don't
And
know
again, like,
shit.
You don't know
It's
half
those-
the crap I played.
No, but that's the thing. It's like it's those little informative moments that eventually get you where you need to go. Because again, you had the opposite thing of you played like a lot of jank PC games as a kid. I see that I didn't play PC games for the longest time because I always used to think, oh, PC games just don't work. You try and load them up, or like you need to have the right drives or whatever.
They didn't work. One of my another early childhood memory was my uncle Chris. Rest in peace. Like passed away way too young, but he. I mean, like, you know, so many reasons why I'm sad he passed away, but I think I would have really gotten on with him because he was a big tech head in the 90s.
Yeah.
And he installed Virtual Springfield for me, and just one early memory is just watching him using a fucking hex editor to get this game to work on my PC.
Wow.
Wow.
See,
He was all
it's
about
funny.
that.
My dad was a tech guy, but he was also a. I mean, this is going to be disparaging, and he did pass away a couple of years ago, but he was also a Mac guy. And you know what I mean in terms of Mac people, where it's like, I have the most up to date, like most powerful hardware.
I don't want to say it
okay,
rude,
but
I
yeah,
know
but can
that,
you open a
he,
command
He
prompt?
was trendy.
No.
He was trendy, whereas
Like, and he did know how to do some software programming, but also he was also an engineer, and he was also a hardware guy. So his thing was always, oh, something's not working. It's a software problem. Like if he could just get away with never touching software, he would. But like that's the thing with like OPC games, they're always software problems unless it's like driver stuff. But again, like that's firmware, so you're kind of dropping into software stuff again. But just so a lot of these kind of things have like chipped away over the years, and then eventually I was just kind of like, well, you know, what is the deal with Sonic the Hedgehog sort of thing? And then like I went back and I did eventually play those old games. Like, I mean, I've played them once or twice over the years, but again, it's been one of those things that. And I don't know whether you've ever had this, but it's like when you're a kid and you get into emulators and you download 100 at once, and then you play one for like 10 seconds and then bounce off.
Yep,
like,
done that.
Done that.
Yeah,
I remember that. My dad actually downloaded a bunch of just a folder of ROMs, and he just told me and my brothers to have a go at it because he found it out.
I still feel really bad about this, but it's like I bought the Mega Man and the Castlevania collections on Steam with like a thing of these are classic games, you know, everyone loves these, everyone talks about these. I gotta play them, I gotta expand my knowledge base so I can be in. Played a bit of Mega Man, played a bit of Castlevania, and just bounced right the fuck off both. And maybe I'm too locked in on certain things, but that's why I don't talk about them, because I'm just like, okay, no, I've bounced off. I can't.
Yeah, no,
I'm not the right person to discuss these in the slightest.
Yeah, they are old games. Like, I've been trying to play them too, and it's like, yeah, they're old games. Like, a bit hard to get into, especially when you're grown up with like more modern stuff or like more fluid controls.
Yeah,
or
I mean, I don't even know what it is, but like I'll occasionally see, you know, the Mega Man collections in my Steam account and be like, you should get back to this. You gotta crack this nut, man. You gotta crack this nut.
So do you want to? So what's funny with me is that like two things have motivated me like in the past maybe decade to actually play games that like I have. And this is going to sound weirdly like I'm and so to people at home who like download games or whatever, like this isn't me evangelizing here. Like you can get games however you want, but it's like it's two things. One, which is actually buying stuff makes me feel like I have to commit to it.
That's why I bought these. That's why I bought the collections rather than just grabbing ROMs. Yeah.
I did that with Sonic Origins, and I feel like versus whenever I've tried to play it as a ROM, and I've just because I was thinking about that when I was a kid. Like with Advanced, I had the first one on a cartridge, but then flash carts came out for the GBA relatively quick. And that became a thing of, I'm going to put 100 ROMs on this and never stick with anything. Whereas Rush had come out on the DS just before the R4 did. And so I was actually like, well, I'm going to sit with this and play through it because I own this and I feel like I have a thing too. So that's one thing. So buying Origins actually got me to play through them. Another motivating factor is that I feel like, well, I might want to make a video about this, so maybe I should just sit down and play them for footage.
I have done that in the past with games, but not big franchise ones, usually weird ones where I'm just sometimes it happens less because videos take way longer for me now because I get really into the weeds, but there were times in the past, and I really want to make a video like this again where I look at a game, see something weird, and just buy it and just challenge myself to, right, you're making a video out of this.
Stick with it.
Yeah. It is hard to stick with games nowadays, though, because you're like, oh, you have other things you want to do, or like other games you want to play.
Also, games are just a really horrible comparison. And one I feel like it just came to mind, I'd say it, but the first one I bought, I have to use it. I've done that with 2 or 3 gym memberships over my life.
I have also done that.
I've done that too.
My bike is very much feeling like that as well at the moment. I haven't been on it in a couple of weeks, so I need to fit that. But again, but with Sonic, it was just kind of a thing of, because Frontiers was coming out, immediate reaction around it was like this is gonna be dog shit kind of thing, and I was like, well, why are people like that with Sonic the Hedgehog? And I kept talking to you about it, and I just decided, well, I'm going to go back and I'm going to play these old Sonics. Granted, Origins probably wasn't the most authentic way because they added the drop dash from fucking Sonic.
Yeah,
Mania,
Origins is a debated one. It's very odd because there's a lot of ways to play those old games, and I can't say there's a correct one. I'm pretty sure most people would say a baseline. Just play it as close to the original hardware as possible. It's
sorry, I have been gassing so much about myself for the past 20 minutes, but no, I realized the game that it was that kind of switched my head around on Sonic just kind of being this sort of weird character to somebody that I can kind of be like, no, he does games differently. Was Mania. One of the early videos that I did as Games D was about Sonic Mania, and I was just kind of like, oh, I don't really get it. And all the comments were just kind of like, I wish you had given this more of a fair shake. And I was like, okay. I eventually went back, did probably play it, and kind of and basically it was just read. It was weird. It was like fucking Minecraft and Dark Souls. I had to go online and be like, okay, how can I get... what am I doing running Sonic Mania? And they were like, use the drop dash as much as possible, kind of think about it this way. And then it just clicked of, oh, it's a marble, mate. It's like, it's a 3D marble game, but in CD.
Yeah, exactly.
I get it.
It's very funny. One of my favorite video makers, Shaymay, now Shugals, he had a video series 10 years ago, which I think is actually, he's taken it down now for personal reasons, and also it's a 10-year-old video talking about the way people talk about Sonic games and the design and the gameplay, so it's quite out of date. But I think it was a very interesting kind of video. I don't want to say historically, is that gassing it too much for an online video? But
well, how many views did he? Well,
I mean, it had a few 100,000, but I think it had like 100,000 or so, but within like a niche, like actually talking about Sonic a lot community, it's like it's different degrees. It's like different scales. Basically, he made a video recently, which was called "How to Enjoy 2D Sonic," which I think kind of gets at that is people try and get into it, and ironically enough, for what the games are about, they bounce off of it because it is very unusual. It's like something that I don't want to say an acquired taste, but you kind of have to go in with a set of expectations and like, well, this is going to be like a marble game or a pinball game in 2D. It's physics driven. It's like
the thing that made it click into place for me, and this is the nice segue into the animation. Is actually doing research into why was Sonic the Hedgehog made, and why was it made exactly like it was? And not to evoke his name, which we've already done 100 times already, but the reason that Sonic the Hedgehog was created was as a direct response to Nintendo Super Mario. Because
Mario,
when the Mega Drive was released in Japan, it was in 1987 or 1988. It was the same day as Super Mario Bros. 3, which outsold the Mega Drive 10-1. Now, it is a piece of software. It's obviously going to be cheaper than hardware, but Sega kind of saw that as a sign of, fuck, what have we done here? Because the whole selling point of the Mega Drive was Master System had come out. It had been a small sales success, but it was them trying to basically figure out, okay, how do we do a home console? How do we compete with like what NEC are doing with the PCs and what the NES is doing? But the big selling point of the Mega Drive was the arcade in your living room. Like they wanted like a copy of Afterburner on it. And
before Sonic 1, I believe Altered Beast was the pack-in because that was an arcade game. Yeah,
that was
look at this.
Oh yeah, and
it has all this like technology in it that like this cut sprite scaling and like different levels of parallax and stuff like that, which Mario couldn't do on the NES, but it didn't matter because Nintendo had
shit.
Nintendo had put in the work of basically building a character that was recognizable that people could sort of gel with and be like, you know, I don't really care how this guy. I'm willing to buy a Game Boy game where he looks like, you know, a fucking barcode. It doesn't matter as long as the gameplay, as long as the Mario experience that I'm expecting, I am there day one. And Sega's just kind of a bit like, fuck, what do we do? Because they had Alex Kidd on the Master System, but he never really became like an identifiable part of Sega. Again, the thing was they were so kind of focused on the arcade stuff that the Ferrari from Outrun was a bigger mascot for them than Alex Kidd was. And so
just wild.
Yeah, no, I know. It's fucking, but again, like this is very much like the identity of Sega at the time as well, and I don't know a ton about this, but it's one of those things that kind of like they sort of move through different identities as they go along, and their big guy.
It's funny. So
Yu Suzuki.
Sega started as Service Games out of Hawaii, and they were called Service Games because they were making arcade games for the military. That's Service Games. So that's probably why they considered in the 90s arcade parity a very big deal for the home console.
Yeah. No, I just keep forgetting that Sega isn't originally Japanese.
No,
and that's the thing that people always, and again, it was the thing that you were saying earlier about how Sonic has these so many different, it's like you shine a light through them and it splits out like a prism of all these different identities. Going all the way back to the forming of Sega, where they are an American well, I mean, obviously Hawaii is this kind of like, you know,
a lot of Japanese immigrants over that way. And,
it's between America and Japan, isn't it? So it's kind of like, like these very split identities, and that then becomes sort of Sega's thing going forward. But yeah, it has that very sort of Japanese macho thing of let's show off how good our technology is, which leads to them doing all these arcade stuff like Afterburner, where you're in a fucking cabinet that looks like an F1 cockpit and it's like swinging back and forth, and Outrun, where they, you know, Yu Suzuki was like the only guy in Japan who had a Ferrari, and it was purely for reference for fucking Outrun. A game that you play today and it feels like a calculator toy. It's like, well, this doesn't feel like driving a Ferrari. But again, that also misses the context of they built that cabinet to feel like, you know, you're pushing through gears and like the wheel has like force feedback and stuff like that. And again, the big selling point of the Mega Drive was we're going to do that, but at home.
Yeah.
Didn't fucking work in Japan. They were like, we don't give a fuck. We like Mario. And so they went, we need a Mario then. So they go to their best and brightest at Sega, who at the time are Yuji Naka and Naoto Oshima, coming off of Phantasy Star, and Yasuhiro Kirihama, I think, he's the level design guy from. And so they put them all together and they go, right, we need a mascot that can defeat Mario, and we basically need two things. One, somebody who's going to be as appealing as him, but you also need to like demonstrate how fucking good you need to show that the Mega Drive is going to be able to do stuff that not only the NES can't do, but we already know that Nintendo's got a 16-bit machine coming out, and we have to basically show them up at that. And so they put their heads together, and eventually they come up with, like, they go for all these different concepts. Like, they come up with like a rabbit, they come up with a fat guy in pajamas and stuff like that. But then eventually they go, well, we have this guy called Sonic the Hedgehog. He has gloves and shoes like Mickey Mouse. He has the can-do attitude of Bill Clinton and Michael Jackson.
So anything you bring up, Sonic has the fucking can-do attitude of Bill Clinton, because that fat guy, Eggman's design is based on Teddy Roosevelt.
Teddy Roosevelt. Well, he's got Teddy Roosevelt's big mustache and glasses. So.
That's why he keeps surviving, because it takes more than Sonic to kill a bull moose.
And Sonic the Hedgehog as well, not only is he blue because blue is like the opposite color of red like Mario, but he's also the colors of the American flag. He's red, white, and blue. He's got red, but with like little yellow buckles as well. But basically they come up with like essentially the modern day Mickey Mouse, where it's, you know, it's Poochie from The Simpsons, where it's like, can you give him like 20% more toot? And they give him like a little furrowed brow, and it's like, yeah, perfect. This is going to do well over in the States. And it does, for kind of two reasons. One, the Mega Drive had already been out in Japan at this point for a while, so they were able to get the manufacturing costs down. So when it came out into the States, it was already cheaper than the SNES.
Mm-hmm.
Nintendo had shot themselves in the foot with Super Mario World because they were like, well, we don't really know what we want to do with this one, so why don't we use Super Mario Bros. 3 as a basis, but then do nicer graphics? And then they were like, well, what should the graphics look like? Should we do like kind of CG or whatever like that? And they're like, no, make it kind of look like a cart, like make it funny. And Super Mario World is like a really funny looking game. Like when he's tiny, he has like little dotted eyes and all of the dinosaurs that he fights are like fucking goobers that like fart and barf and stuff. And it's like, this is a funny game. In the 90s, though, people were like, what the fuck is this shit? I want to listen to Nirvana and shoot up on heroin. This sucks. Sonic the Hedgehog comes along, though, where it looks like pre-rendered CG. Like all of the fucking palm trees in the background and, you know, stuff like that look like early CG demos. It has all these like layers of parallax. But more importantly, because they're able to draw sprites on screen so fucking quickly, they're like, Yuji Naka's like, well, I've been really bored making these slow as fuck adventure dungeon crawling games. Can we make the quickest game possible on the Mega Drive? And they were like, yeah, let's go for it. And again, it's a really big flex of him going, hey, we have a realistic physics systems in this, so why don't we build that into the game? So it's all about him being this little marble pinball kind of thing. He can go, it's the challenge, it's the Sega challenge thing of, well, you can play the game once and to get to the credits, but that's not really playing the game. You want to be in the arcade impressing people with your skills. So the actual trick is trying to go as quickly as possible and maintain that speed throughout a level. There's also like all these extra things with like collecting rings, which is like a little challenge on itself of like you get hit once and you drop all of them. They're basically putting in all these tricks to basically show like, hey, look what we can do at Sega. That like, again, it's the line Sega does what Nintendo don't. And it is like Sonic the Hedgehog 1 is such a demonstration of like, look how much we have this in the bag. Comes out in the United States and it is like a phenomenon. Like it does genuinely create a rival to Nintendo. And that then is followed on when he eventually comes out in Europe a little bit later on. But like Sega have hit upon something here, which is really like, you know, again, it is like a genuine phenomenon. And as is the case in the 90s, well, merchandise comes a calling because these games are going to take a while to do. So can we keep Sonic in the mind space for as long as possible? And I feel like with Mario, he has this kind of thing to him where because he was kind of designed as a Popeye style old-fashioned animation character, he's always kind of felt a little bit of a step out of time. Whereas because Sonic would, and again, I don't want to like repeat the.
There's so much that's gone into what is like a very big video about, you know, how, like Mario is timeless, but Sonic is time locked.
Yeah, I was about to call him the folding ideas guy, but that's not. It's the old like
Innuendo Studios guy.
Yeah,
which is
Innuendo
a point I think. I kind of agree with. Also, think it's just trying to sound clever, where it's like, cool is only timed if you really want to set it that way.
Yeah,
which I don't think is true. I think.
Like
cool things usually remain cool forever, like smoking cigarettes. I mean, we all agree on, and leather jackets. They are always going to be cool.
They'll have their time when
they'll
have their time when they are novel and cool, but they will still be cool thereafter. A few things will cease to be cool.
No, I'm just gonna say, as someone who's lived with smokers, smoking isn't cool. It's fucking horrifying and disgusting.
You know what's funny though, Sweet, is that I think smoking is cool because my parents didn't. My parents are like the strangest people alive because they're kind of like late boomers, early X's in regards to kind of like, oh, we just learn through doing with our children, ha ha ha.
Yeah.
Really fucking foot down in regards to do not. If I even catch a cigarette in your hand, you are dead. You are mulch. Do not smoke ever. And
I kind of had that as well, which is funny because both my parents, lots of siblings, all of them smokers, but my parents both wound up being like the sibling who didn't smoke.
Oh yeah,
but also were they like really foot down? Like you do not smoke ever.
No, they were. But my dad was like,
does that
both my
happen?
dad and my mum were like, don't care if you drink, you are not fucking smoking.
Yeah, same with them. Like when I was like 12 at like family barbecues, it was like, oh, do you want one of those little French beers that we got from Morrison's? It's like, hell yeah, I do. These taste disgusting, but I feel like a little man drinking one.
Yeah, no, like my dad specifically was also kind of like, don't fucking smoke. He didn't give me beer and stuff when I was a kid. He was like, no, you're waiting till you're 18 for that. But like, yeah, no smoking. And then my mom and stepdad smoked. And I will tell you, because actually, am I the only one with divorced parents here? So you can't relate.
My parents are divorced now.
My parents never married, so they can't divorce.
Nah, true. But no, basically, when I was a kid, it would be like every other weekend I would go to my mom's place. Yeah. And the thing is, my dad always said it, and he was always annoyed because when we came home, all our shit
smoke
fucking reeked.
I had that. I visited an aunt in Ireland, and she's a big smoker. Yeah, and I didn't feel it at the time, but when I got back to England, I got my suitcase out, opened it, and I was hit by how that house had been smelling for the past week, and I was like, oh man, this has to go through several washes.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm actually annoyed because I actually have collectible figures that I had at my mom's, and they still reek, and they're like, that's.
I thought you were going to say, are they covered in like yellow residue from like tar?
Yeah, Optimus Prime has yellowed fingers from when he was lit up.
No, that's just the plastic.
I don't know why, but I'm imagining like you have your shelves for Transformers, but then the ones that smoke, you have a special shelf that's outside for them to have a tab on, like they're on their lunch break.
I will say, we are now several minutes beyond like how long the actual film we're talking about is. We are beyond like the 54-minute length of what we're talking about, which is fine. This is an excuse to talk about Sonic. We'll get to the movie. But
if any, not to put a damper on the film, I feel like Sonic in general is more interesting than this film. And this film is interesting, but it is also a 50-minute OVA.
I'm going to be real. I like this movie. I understand someone who didn't grow up with it not liking it, but this film is still mostly interesting as like
it's fun.
What it says about Sonic.
That is how I feel about it. I think it is interesting as a piece of merchandise in a way that the modern Sonic films aren't. Like, if we did a video on those like new Blur Studios Paramount Sonics, I don't think there's as much interesting to say there versus this.
This is like an interesting little image, and I think, I mean, it's mostly a curiosity in that, this was like before, when Sonic was still kind of undefined, and we can put our own little twist on it.
Let me put a cap then to what I was saying, because this is the lead in regards to. So Sonic 1 comes out, mega hit. They're like, we need to put a new one into development immediately. Yuji Naka goes to his fucking bosses and says, can you give me more money? They say no. And he goes, I fucking hate you. I fucking hate Japan. I'm going to fucking drive my car into a wall. Fuck my life. And Mark Cerny goes, do you want to come work in the United States where I'm not going to be a mean bossy? And he's like, yes, please. So he brings over...
how the Sega Technical Institute is formed in San Francisco.
SIT. SIT. And he brings over Kazuhiro with him as well. Which is, funnily enough, is how... Because I was going to say... So the original, and I don't want to put too much on, because I feel like a lot of people are like, Sonic was only good when the Dream Team developed it. There was only one game that all three of them worked on, and it was Sonic 1, and they all hated it. Well, they didn't all hate each other. Yuji Naka hated everyone on that team.
Is the best 2D Sonic game.
To be fair, Yuji Naka seems like a big fucking dick.
Yeah. You listen to interviews with the other guy, especially fucking Oshima, who is now the head of RZest, and he just seems like a lovely guy, and he's just like, yeah, I don't know why Yuji Naka's like that. It's a shame because he's the greatest programmer I've ever spoken to, but he he won't even be mean to say that he's difficult to work with. He'll just say, oh, he has a vision in his head, and sometimes he's not lining with that.
Versus the oddest thing I've ever heard about Yuji Naka's like programming skills, which I don't know how thing it is, because apparently didn't he just nick a lot of other people's fucking code and shit?
So the famous not in it. Who's the guy that made DMC?
Oh god, Kamiya.
Who blocks
Hideki
you on Twitter?
Hideki
Yeah,
Kamiya.
Kamiya.
Kamiya famously said this about Inafune, where he said he isn't a game designer, he's a manager. And I feel like he's a project manager, and I feel a little bit about that with Naka, where he took credit for the people who worked under him, their contributions to a lot of games, because he was only really a developer on Sonic 1. After that, he went into like general management. But he's like, yeah, look at all the shit that we're doing in Sonic 2, and that's all me. And it's like,
That's
no,
me,
that's all
baby.
you taking credit for what the people at fucking Sega
It's
Institute
funny because
are doing.
this is super old, and I'm gonna actually just throw it out to the comments like where the fuck did this come from, because there was like years after, it's like, oh yeah, with Sonic CD we wanted to have like instant teleportation between time zones, and we know that Yuji Naka could have programmed that and got it to work, but we just couldn't. It's like, what? Hang on, what?
So CD was Naoto, who again was more pally with the Sega higher ups because he's a nice guy to work with. Basically,
CD
They
was
were
made
like-
in Japan when STI went off to America and fucking was working on Sonic.
Because Sonic 2 was 92 or 93?
That
It was really late
that
92.
was 92, and just odd
Okay,
trivia
yeah.
that I've got, which is Emerald Hill Zone. Emerald Hill was so named because of the road that the STI was based on, which was Emerald Hill.
And it's also why the beginning of Sonic Adventure 2, you go down Lombard Street in San Francisco. But
Woo!
but I say all that because it's like, so Naruto stays behind and he works on CD, which not a game I particularly like, but I can sort of respect as being like this interesting curiosity. And again, the visuals are more interesting. They're using the CD format to do RAM loading for all this like time travel stuff, but also better music. It has 2 different soundtracks. That's going for it. Whereas Sonic 2 is the more like, if CD is a lateral sequel, this is a more linear improvement of there's another character in it. They're basically doubling down on the stuff people like. And as a result, Sonic 2 is the one that's like, if you were to ask like 100 Sonic fans, at least 85 would come back and say, well, Sonic 2 is the best one.
Yeah, but the remaining 15 would be much louder about CD.
Oh no, I don't even think there's the other 15 like CD more. I think like that's just accounting for people who are like, well, I don't like the 2D ones. Adventure's my favorite,
okay.
or I don't like the old ones. Colors is my favorite, or whatever. And I guess we would also be asking this question before Mania came out, because I feel like most people now would be like, oh, Mania is my favorite, or I don't know. Again, Sonic is weird.
Look, it's impossible to put statistics on Sonic fans. They're crazy. They're out there, man.
That is true. But I think part of that is, so they work on Sonic 2, and then Sonic 3 and Knuckles, this thing that's long in development. And then that is the Trilogy plus CD if you were a little rich boy and were able to afford a fucking CD add-on for the Mega Drive.
I will say though, I had
10
Sonic
games.
CD as a kid, but on PC, because there was a PC CD release, like
Oh,
Sonic 3.
yeah.
So you didn't actually need a CD. So that's the thing I find funny, because James, we've talked about it a bit before, where we both kind of remember that in the the noughts, early 2010s, before the Taxman's re-release of Sonic CD, there were people who played CD as kids who were like, oh no, this is the best Sonic game. No one played it. No one got to play this thing, man. Then it got re-released, and just it being the best, like, that no one ever played, it just kind of ceased to be a talking point, and not because, like, oh, it actually was the best, but because now everyone's played it, it's not that special.
There's something that I said on one of the Discords before, which I feel like is like the smartest thing I said, but because it's me, I bumbled it a lot, which is... But I was saying this about Prey 2, where that was a game that never came out, and because of that, it was nothing but potential. And I basically was like, with like unreleased games and stuff like Sonic CD, where people didn't play it, is basically like people treat it like a unicorn, like it's this magical being. Whereas when it finally came out, you just kind of realized, oh, it's a horse with a fucking horn on its head. Like, why were we gassing this thing up so fucking much? Like, why?
Sonic CD
why are we jazzing this up?
Sonic CD still has shooters, but I don't think it's very good. I just don't.
I don't think most people think it's very good nowadays.
I mean, I'll get crucified by the people who really shoot for CD, but man, it's got cool music and cool aesthetics, but it's arse to play.
Before those, because again, there were re-releases of it coming out, but it was in GameCube collections where people went, "Oh, but the emulation's bad. That's what made the game design worse." And it's like, that doesn't make sense, but okay. But yeah, when Taxman put his port out, where he was like, "Not only is this 1-to-1 perfect, it's actually better than CD."
It is. And here's the thing: it fixed collision issues. The Taxman port. It is better, but it's still.
And then you play it and you go, "Oh, this is a weird Sonic game and it's not very good. I don't particularly like this." So yeah, like it is. Again, it is a weird horse with a horn on its head.
It's
not
funny
like
as well because
this
I
transformative thing.
I think both Sonic CD and 2 are like diagonal improvements, not like straightforward ones. But I think Sonic 2 is like, it's a smoother drink because that's like
two is a crowd pleaser.
Yeah,
like,
it's like
easily.
What people like about Sonic. He's fast. Let's make levels that emphasize speed. Meanwhile, CD is like, what's cool about Sonic? His movement lets you do exploration really well. So let's double down on exploration.
You could argue it's where the US-Japan split started to appear in the game design stuff, because you could imagine that with the Japanese team, they probably were a bit more siloed and were like, well, what do we think would be interesting? And so they're doing stuff which is more computationally expensive, like, time traveling and stuff. But then you play that as a kid and you're like, oh, I don't really get it. Whereas with 2, I imagine, because it's in the US, that was probably focus tested to death. Like, they probably had 15 kids every single week coming in the office and they'd go, what was your favorite level in Sonic 1? And they all said, oh, Green Hill. Mostly because it was the first level they played. And they went, okay. And so every level in Sonic 2 is a variation on Green Hill.
Yeah, I can see that. So that's how you get the speed versus exploration. And then you get S3 and K, which kind of, I would say, is the marriage of like these ideas.
I gave you a Mario analogy this the other day, but Sonic 1 is the Super Mario Brothers where they're kind of figuring it out, although Super Mario Brothers is also based on what they figured out in Donkey Kong and Mario Bros. And experiments and side-scroll and whatever. But it's a bit more put together than Sonic 1 is, where they really want to show off all these different weird things that they can do. Like there's labyrinth levels and swimming, like underwater levels and stuff. Whatever. Sonic 2 is like the Mario Brothers 3, where it's literally they have doubled down on the stuff that people like. And then 3 and Knuckles is kind of like, well, we just sort of want to... It's Mario World, where it's like, we kind of want to do the same thing again, but there has to be like an obvious lateral improvement, so... add another character, add some 3D bonus stages. I don't like. They're all just kind of looking at each other like, well, what's the improvement going to be? And obviously, that was made in house. Like Yuji Naka had come back at that point. And, did it in Japan.
What an indecisive man!
Oh, he is an interesting fella. But again, that is the original trilogy to most point, which most people would say like that is Sonic. That is. When you think of classic Sonic, it is those 3.5 to 4 games of all of that. It's not the, Sega Sonic the Hedgehog, the arcade game, because nobody played that. It's not the popcorn machine, because that's something you discover after the fact. It is those Mega Drive games.
Yeah, like I did just now. What the fuck?
Oh yeah, did you not? Yeah, they made the Sonic popcorn machine, which is what's referenced in Sonic Mania.
Oh, I never knew that. I've not played Mania either.
The maddening thing about Mania is everything is a reference. Even everything that seems innocuous is a fucking reference.
Oh god, it's the Family Guy of Sonic games.
It is the Family Guy of Sonic
my tongue. I was about to say it's the Family Guy of Sonic games, which there we go.
Holy crap, Tails! Remember the time where I fought Knack the Weasel?
I was gonna say,
remember when we were in a Puyo game?
Oh, you remember
Sonic?
You remember Blue Spheres?
You remember this scrapped bad Nick? It's mad. Great game. This is why everyone loves it.
But this is the thing, and this is probably the meanest thing I'm going to say about Sonic Mania, because I would say that is my favorite Sonic game. It is very much shut up and play the hits of... It felt like Sega just well, it wasn't even Sega. It was like... Taxman pitched to them, why don't you let us make a Sonic game? And they eventually relented. And what it is like this it's not so much a love letter to the classic ones. It is just a new classic Sonic game in the same way that like Mega Man 8 and 9 or 9 and 10 were, but just way better, because it isn't just like recreating the flaws and all. It is like a spiritual, okay, what would the Sonic game of 1995 have been, or 1996, where maybe we could use the 32X to have extra colors and better sound and stuff like that. Hey, we can have like an early 3D level for the special stage stuff. Like it genuinely does feel like, how would you have improved the classic Sonics from then? And then obviously it kind of fits into a nice piece then with what Dimps eventually did with it, Advance and DS, and then kind of this return to classic Sonic that they've tried to do in the past few years with, funnily enough, going back to Naoto Oshima doing Superstars, which, to say what happens to those three guys, so Oshima obviously stays with Sega for a while, but then he decides to form his own company, which becomes Artoon, who do a lot of not very good Yoshi games, and then form RZest to do a bunch of other stuff. And
he did Blink's the Time Sweeper.
Yeah, again, so like that's an entire history that you could support, like Microsoft playing at the dials of fuck. Does the Xbox need a mascot? And
how do we make a mascot platformer? Get the Sonic guy to make a
get the guy who invented Sonic the Hedgehog to. And again, like there's that weird connection with them and Sega with all. Again, that's a completely different podcast. Yasuhara stays he loves the United States. He's like, I want to stick around, and because he's in San Francisco and Mark Cerny is his boss, he goes, hey, I know the studio down the road called Naughty Dog. Do you fancy going over there and being the big dog game designer? He's like, absolutely. He works on the Jack games and the first Uncharted. So he's like in the US games industry for a while then, and then he goes off and he works for Namco for a bit. Then he works at Nintendo Software Technology for a while, which is their US development studio that didn't really do a lot. And now he's at Unity, which not great.
Okay, that's a career. Yeah, what a career there.
And then Yuji Naka went to jail.
Yeah, Yuji Naka did insider trading on
what did Yuji Naka do after Sonic? Well, he did some insider trading while he was at Square Enix.
Yes, for a fucking shitty video game.
It was over the bloody Final Fantasy fucking battle royale.
The Final Fantasy mobile game, which was closed down 8 months after that insight. It was only on the App Store for 8 months.
Wait, really? Oh my. Oh yeah, no, I think I remember this one.
His jail sentence was longer than the game's lifespan.
Oh, Dios mío.
And obviously, for people at home, he didn't actually go to jail, but he has had to do community service because of it. Although there is a clause that in his, basically the judge, he was like, we'll give you community service this time, but here's the clause. If you do insider trading again, we are giving you the maximum sentence possible for this crime, which is life.
Holy shit.
Holy shit.
So Yuji Naka is on the thinnest of fucking thin ice from here on out.
Yuji Naka, please get one more Sonic game out, even though you've got no involvement left before you go to jail for life.
And I find him such an interest. You could write like a David Mamet style rise and fall play about Yuji Naka, because he perfectly represents how the games industry has changed for the better, in my opinion, of going from people who got hired for being technical powerhouses and whiz kids in regards to what they could do with programming, but were absolute fucking monsters to work with, versus now, where I always think of this quote that Warren Spector gave about when he was working on that Mickey Mouse game, which, whatever with that, but he said, when we worked on Deus Ex, we would have hired Hitler if he knew how to program in Unreal. Like, that's how desperate we were for things. But now we've realized that it doesn't actually... You can just teach people how to make games. It's not like arcane knowledge. So we'd rather just hire people that are easy to work with and like cultivate a better team. And that's kind of what the games industry is now. Is like, yeah, you can just learn on the job, really. It's more about just getting team players. Which Yuji Naka is famously not a team player to the extent of he went to jail for insider trading. And also the story of
I don't know. I'd say insider trading is the biggest team player move you could ever make, really.
Not really, because you're throwing your team under the bus.
You're really trusting that team, though, in the meantime.
You know the Naka story, right? Of he came over to the States and he saw one of the internal studios was working on a Saturn game.
And he goes said in Japanese, like, get their code, strip their shit, get them out of here, and they all spoke Japanese.
They could all understand Japanese, and we're just looking at him like, what the fuck?
Yeah, no, the guy is a bastard through and through.
Oh, he is a mega cunt, which... hey ho, he eventually got his just desserts, and I hope to have him on Bullet Time itself. I'm on Coyote Time.
Yeah.
There we go. That's part of his community service is appearing on a pod about the platform.
It's appearing on the platform podcast we see. But all of this is to say is Sonic the Hedgehog then is in an interesting place in the year 1996.
Oh boy.
Because 3 and K had come out, and 2 years prior, and was for all intents and purposes a hit. But this was big, transformable, huge transformation was happening in the games industry at the time because everyone was moving on to polygonal 3D. The PlayStation had come out right at the end of 94, which was it had Ridge Racer, which was this big early demo with CG stuff, and they were like, wow, never seen anything like this before. This is the future of games. The Saturn, I think they were able to get out middle of 95, right? Which...
Yes, I think 95 sounds right.
The Saturn is kind of the beginning of where... Well, it's not even the beginning of where the wheels come off for Sega, because as we said earlier, there's been a split between the Japanese and US sides of the business, and it is a genuine split in, methodology, in, kind of ideas and stuff like that, because the Japanese side want to do one thing one way, and the US side want to do one thing the other.
Oh, yeah, no, the US side wanted to push, just anything to keep the Mega Drive relevant.
And the Japanese side would be in why are we supporting the Mega Drive? It's old hat. We need to move on to the Saturn. While the Americans are it's selling. Why aren't we doing more?
Yeah, no,
it?
Kim Justice said this in her video about Sega versus Nintendo UK perspective. Basically, them can't stop selling the Mega Drive in Europe. It's insanity because it was still selling really well as budget option.
It goes into my point of saying about if you are still selling old technology which is cheaper than the new stuff, people will still buy it. People just want to. Hey, if you say to somebody, "Hey, there is this console here. Sure, it's 5 years old, but it's dead cheap, and all of the best games that come out for it, and they're also dead cheap." The PlayStation had that for years over here, and I think the backwards compatibility thing was a big thing with the PS2. Was I can play all my PS1 games on this? Sick. I can go out and still buy those.
Yeah, but we saw this with the PS4 too. People would.
Yeah, and we're kind of seeing it with the PS5. There's still no quote PS. There's only 1 or 2 PS5 only games that you can get. So
yeah.
I mean, back in this era, exclusive. I think that's part of why exclusives are still considered such a big deal. But yeah, in the 90s, what you had defined your console. Which now everything is designed exactly the same. It feels it should feel like actually the game you can keep to yourself should be more defining because your tech isn't different, but no, really it isn't that much anymore.
Yeah, no,
it feels like all the wheels fell off on the big franchises. Microsoft had Halo and fucking Sony had Uncharted and Last of Us, but they're just spinning their wheels at this point.
Microsoft, I think, did themselves in, and this goes back to my point of when you have 100 ROMs and it feels like you have nothing. I think Game Pass really did shoot him in the foot a little bit.
Oh no, it absolutely did.
I think it's like binge watching. It seemed like a good idea when it was fresh. Because oh man, a new way we can say this is good for the audience. And for a while, the audience is like, hell yeah, we get it all. But over time, you realize actually there's something nice about waiting. There's something nice about having time to digest something.
And it's also nice to just not get choice paralysis or here's our 5 billion games for my subscription.
It's like you said, James, about, buying a game so you feel the need to actually have to play it.
Yeah. And that's something I've realized with Steam sales. How many of us have bought games on Steam sales just because they're cheap and
that probably makes up over 50% of my library is games I bought on sale.
To date this episode again, because obviously Humble have closed down their games division. I have gotten so many games from Humble Bundles. Humble Bundles that I have never played.
Yeah. I have forgotten even half of the games I've gotten.
I have all of the PC Star Wars games, and I will play maybe one of them. That's it.
It's it's Game Pass. Not to.
It's a mixed bag, and as it says, people go, "Oh, it's good for people who can just, you can just get the games." It's but over time they're going to extract more money from you than if
also
you just
it's really bad. It's also really bad for a bottom line, really, Like,
Yeah, and I feel like it tarnishes because like I remember when Netflix would start doing their own original series, and their first big one was House of Cards, and it was like, oh, David Fincher produced it, and blah blah blah, and it's like, yeah, but it's not like real prestige television. This is like a kid this is like a kid wearing a suit to look like an adult. This isn't like real stuff. And I feel like Game Pass stuff now has that stink of Halo no longer feels like a prestige franchise because it's on Game. Which again, maybe that's a more of an insane thing that I have said rather than people who go into CEX are only there for building their collections.
Yeah, no, I think Halo more suffered from just
not being good mostly. But even though I did like Infinite, and to bring it to Sega. All of the Atlas games, like the Personas, are on Game Pass now, and all of the Like a Dragon games are on.
And
Game
also
Pass
another thing, they're all coming to PC too. So it's like,
No, again, like I feel like we're past that era of exclusivity. Which, on one hand, I mean, good. I just want to play games on whatever devices I have, but also, you don't really have that competitive spirit anymore. Like again. The US side of Sega were doing a lot of stuff to just try and show up what Nintendo was doing, which a lot of it was crap. Like they had a lot of like fucking comic book and film tie-ins that they just shut out the door. But then they also had a lot of they had like Herzog's Zwei, like this cool little strategy game that Nintendo weren't going to make. Like drives competition in interesting ways. But
I think that's part of what people miss about the 90s and 2000s.
The consoles.
This is just becoming a bullet time episode. But the consoles.
Yeah,
are
exactly.
The sense of competition, but also just the fact. I also think we don't put it this way because we think, oh my god, they were so much more innovative. It's like, no, it's just the companies hadn't. It was a completely junior fucking establishment that was discovering itself.
Oh
so
yeah,
all the
exactly.
weird experimentation was just a bunch of people going, does this work? Who fucking knows? We'll figure it out.
This era of games consoles has felt a little bit like a Joe Biden presidency. It's like they're asleep at the wheel and they're like, well, everything's working absolutely fine. Whereas us, the gamers, are shouting saying, no, get a competitive spirit again. Get a Kamala Harris games console out there to shake things up. Maybe that's what the Switch 2 is going to be.
Get a Bill Clinton in there, and by a Bill Clinton I mean a Sonic in there.
Get a little hedgehog with fucking Clinton and Michael Jackson's can-do spirit. Now my question is, what is the doing that they can do?
Michael Jackson, he can do, but he probably shouldn't.
Yeah, he absolutely should not do spirit. But 96 is a weird year because Sonic Extreme is this thing that they're building for the Saturn, which, okay, so that was my point of 3D is the big frontier. Nintendo's about to drop the bomb with Super Mario 64, which creates open world games forever and ever. Sonic has to react to that. What's Sonic seen doing? Yuji Naka, I want to make a game about dreams. Fuck, like he's in his Brian Wilson Beach Boys phase of like it's like when you are a director and when you direct films for so long you decide, oh, I want to make a film about imagination, like I'm gonna be the guy who cracks the nut with that, and they're always bad, like Mr. Megorium's Wonder Emporium and stuff like that. It's like, why did you do this? This is stupid. But games are the same. They're like, we want to tackle
not a good tactical
dreams.
move, but Knights, I'm not going to say Knights is stupid. I ain't going to be that guy.
Knights is fine, I think. But Knights, but okay, here's what I'll say, Snake. Knights is a really good game. Knights wasn't going to save the Sega Saturn.
No, but you gotta respect, you gotta respect fiddling while Rome burns,
No, that's what I mean. Yeah, I respect it from kind of like, like a Brian Wilson Beach Boys thing of a guy at his absolute height of power while his company is fucking spurting money from every single corner and they're going, please, for the love of God, just give us another Revolver, give us another Abbey Road. And he's going, actually, I think I'm going to do another Octopus's Garden. I think that's more interesting. I'm going to give you a Maxwell Silver Hammer. I think that's what the gamers really want. And in the long run, yeah, you do need interesting, weird games like Knights. but you can't sell a console on Knights, and eventually the Saturn does shit the bed.
Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, Knights is like a game that you make when you're on top, not when you're falling down and need to steady things.
Knights is a game that you put out where if Sonic Extreme had come out, which it didn't because it nearly killed the guy who was making it in the US. So like they're just scrambling for anything, to the extent of like in 97 they put out like a compilation CD of the Mega Drive games with a little 3D hub with it. But so Sonic hasn't really got anything. But over in the US, there's still the cartoons are still coming out. I think Sonic Underground is going to come out any.
Oh no! Okay, so I had to check the dates on this, but it's funny. So Sonic Underground comes out in 1999, which is 5 years removed from Sonic Sonic Sat AM, which surprised me. But as someone who wasn't. I only really watched like adventures, like the goofy Looney Tunes one. I was like, I thought for sure Sonic Underground was like 1993, 94.
Yeah, 95. No, Underground doesn't, because 99 is like, that's Sonic's big, like, in my mind, that is Sonic's big comeback with adventure. That's, don't worry guys, we've righted the ship, everything's going to be okay.
No, but it turns out, even when Sonic's doing well, he's fucking up somewhere else.
Well, it's not really Sonic that's fucking up. It's usually Sega who's just kind of like, oh, is this going to save the Dreamcast? Wait, what's this? The PS2 is coming out next week? Oh, no.
Oh, balls. Damn it.
Fuck.
God damn it. But no, I was going to say, because Sonic Underground feels so fucking 90s that it's like, that doesn't feel right that it came out in 99. But...
No, I see it. No, it surprised me as well. I was like, I was doing some last second note taking before we started, and I was like, Sonic Underground 99. No, that's wrong. But then everything about that show is wrong. So why not? Yeah, it came out in 99. Fuck it.
How many years after that is that set after fucking SREM and Adventures? Like
the
how
fact
many years
that it's only 4 years removed from Sonic X rather than like 10 is so bizarre.
Really?
Yeah, well, Sonic X was 2003, weren't it?
Oh no!
That was
no,
right.
It
was,
right.
it was just
actually,
after Adventure. It was when Adventure 2 came to GameCube was around the time of X. So.
Yeah, actually, it makes sense.
Yeah,
it's so bizarre.
But
man.
that's what they're doing on the US side, and plus obviously they have the comics, which there's the Archie ones and stuff like that, which are they're churning along in the background, but they don't really have any games. Meanwhile, in Japan, what are they doing for merchandise? Well, obviously they have all the plushes, they have the mangas as well, but more importantly, if having a cartoon series is a sign of that your franchise has made it in the United States and Japan, is getting a OVA, an original video animation. And now an hour and 40 minutes in, we finally talk about, now that we have set the context for why they made this this OVA.
I think we did.
Now we've outlined our histories of Sonic, the history of Yuji Naka, the history of the console wars, basically like 5 different topics. Now we can talk about the Sonic OVA.
I was gonna say, are we sure we're not recording a chaotic time or like bullet time or what the fuck?
Can we just, James, can you title this episode An Excuse to Talk About Sonic brackets the Sonic OVA? Because I feel that's
actually, I'm just gonna say movies we like Sonic like that. I'm just gonna not Sonic the movie, not Sonic OVA, just Sonic. Not even Sonic the Hedgehog.
Let's talk about the 3D cartoons also made for Sonic Unleashed and the Sonic movies, and then we can just say Sonic. No, we're not gonna do any of that.
Sonic. You know what? In a few years, in a few decades, you know how they make like biopics on like big singers nowadays. They're gonna do that for gaming. I mean,
stuff. I was gonna say, Snake,
if
you want, after the 3rd film comes out, if you want to do the trilogy on movies, we potentially could.
I wouldn't say no. Let's see how we feel.
We'll put a pin in that, but we'll start with the OVA, because I think that this is like, again, there had been the American cartoons, but they are very. I don't want to say that because they came from the US, they don't feel genuine. I suppose because again, like. A lot of Sonic's identity was mostly informed by the US.
It's one of those odd things with Sonic where he was made primarily for an American audience, I believe, took off the most in America. So I think it makes no small degree of sense to just kind of at some point hand off and go, you know what, the Americans like this, let's let Americans handle it. But
whereas even like when they were making 2, the team that worked on 2 was mostly a lot of Japanese developers with a couple of Americans mixed in.
I was going to say, I don't know what this says, and it probably does. I don't know what it means. I do still kind of prefer when the Japanese are handling Sonic, but with the idea of let's make this appeal to Americans, because I think that outsider step makes it more interesting and just more fascinating when Americans are like, well, how do we pander to ourselves?
I think of that in regards to the Mario stuff of when the Japanese people do when Nintendo do it internally, that kind of has like a sense of authenticity to it versus like the Mario cartoon that Deke made in Canada, where it's like, well, he's an Italian plumber, so he should like fix pipes and it doesn't have that level of kind of, you know, like you can see the gears turning like when the team at Nintendo makes stuff versus just a bunch of guys where it feels like they're phoning it in because it's like, you know, do it in America kind of thing. And I kind of feel a bit about that with this OVA because obviously it wasn't done at Sega, but
yeah, it was done in Japan. It was so one of the first bits of trivia that's really fun is people think that this is the same animation studio that made the intro to Sonic CD, which was I think was it Toei? Yeah, Toei.
Toei.
Yeah, but basically what was the case was Naoto Oshima, like he made up storyboards for like the opening sequence and the ending sequence, and he sent them to Toei, and they contracted that to a company called Studio Junio. So Toei didn't really make those sequences either.
but they did take the money for it.
They did take the money, but yeah, so no, Toei didn't make this, nor did they make the intro to Sonic CD. This was done by Studio Pyro,
like the French clown.
Yes.
Pyro. And they're a big studio. Like,
well, anyways, go ahead, Snake. This is your time to shine. Sorry,
so this is made by Studio Pyro, who just kind of listing off stuff that you may have heard of. Just doing a bit of trivia. They did Yu Yu Hakusho, Great Teacher Onizuka, which I really like. Yu Yu Hakusho, and probably the biggest thing they've done is the Naruto series.
Oh, and don't forget a little series and my favorite drink, Bleach.
Are you drinking some right now?
I decided to ignore Bleach, but I shouldn't ignore Bleach. It was at one point.
Why would you decide to ignore Bleach? And don't forget, they also did Tokyo Ghoul, which has my favorite thing that whenever somebody leaves Twitter because they got upset, they always change their profile picture to Tokyo Ghoul.
Well, there we go.
Oh my god! I just looked up what else they did. This is just completely me, but they did a little show called
The Wonderful Adventure of Niels, right?
No. Three Little Ghosts Afraid of the Dark. I only remember this because this was like on Fox Kid when it was airing. It's like, this is an old ass, like, it's not an interesting show. It's just about 3 ghosts.
Well,
one is a chef.
I think this is also up your alley, but so in 1993, it's licensed by ADV for international release, and they dub it. And I made us watch the dub because I listened to a bit of the JP dub. I heard Tails' voice, and I thought James won't want to watch this in the slightest. I thought I don't want to hear Tails' JP voice. And James has less of a tolerance for anime bullshit than I do, so we're going back to the English dub, which is considered of dubious quality, but having now watched the JP and the English dub, I think the English dub is probably worse acted, but I also think it's kind of a punch-up job in terms of dialogue. The Japanese script is very stock, cliche Japanese lines a lot of the time. Very, very child-focused, which is like... It's a simple one, but I said it's sweet. Like the line where Sonic's being a dick to Tails about not helping someone. You know, Tails yells, "You're no help," and then fucks off. Versus the Japanese line, which is just Sonic Baka, which is like, that's... You can watch a million billion animes where someone yells Baka at someone. Just for a very simple reference. Like, you know, I don't care that they were true to the intent and they punched it up for an English audience.
Yeah, but it's more interesting. It's more memorable. Yeah.
But Swede, why more interesting to you is Sonic's actor, Martin Burke, in the ADV license.
That's a good scene.
Yeah.
Also played Yoshida Furuta in Getarobo and Shiro in Mazin Kaiser. Mazin Kaiser?
Those are... I actually looked at it earlier. Like, the dub studio, Monster Island, they actually dubbed fucking Get a Robo Armageddon and Mazinger Kaiser. Mazinger Kaiser, which is like Mazinger Kaiser is one of those shows. I wouldn't call it a great thing, but it's basically. So, do you all know Mazinger Kaiser just for context?
No.
It's basically an update. It's like a.
Is it an update of Mazinger?
Yeah, Mazinger Z, which is like the first mecha, and it's very like late 90s like metal inspired version. It's pretty cool. It's a fun watch, like nothing special. Get a Roma Armageddon is like the greatest fucking mecha show there is, and like
wow,
fuck it. No, it's an OVA, so we can't watch it on movies we like.
This is an OVA.
Sweet, this is an OVA.
Yeah.
Oh no, I meant like it has several episodes.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, we're not doing series yet. Yeah,
I'm gonna make you.
I mean, it's kind of weird because we're kind of cheating with movies, like, because for one thing, like, this is an OVA, but really it's 2 pilot episodes of a like unpicked up like series. So this was
I thought you were going to say we also bended the rules because we did the second Transformers film and none of us liked it.
Yeah.
I mean, that too. I feel like we're really bad at sticking to our remits, or we set overly narrow ones and then break them out of interest.
Immediately want to break.
Look at the fucking look at the cover for this movie.
It is called Sonic the Hedgehog the movie, which
it says the movie there. It's a movie that we like.
All right, fine. That's fine then. Yeah, but basically every English dub actor in this has a very short anime career, which I hope they all went on to things they like doing. I know Martin Burke, Sonic's actor, he did this when he was a teenager. He was born in like 1983, so
young guy.
He would have been about 16 when he dubbed this.
Yeah, I think he moved on from it.
He's listed on Wikipedia. There's not much about him, but he's listed on Wikipedia as a theatre actor. So
yeah, he probably worked on something like that.
I hope he's still hitting the theatres. I hope he's following.
I hope he plays Willie. I hope he's playing Willie Loman in a adaptation of Death of the Sales. But he's still doing the Sonic voice.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of these people were probably theatre. Like back in the day, like especially in the 2000s when they got dubs. They didn't want to pay like actual voice actors, so they got a lot of theater actors and like theater students to do anime dubs.
That makes sense. It's funny actually. I've seen it. Funnily enough, I think one studio carrying the torch sort of is FromSoft, where instead of hiring big names, they'll just get a bunch of British theatre actors who will work way cheaper and do a better job than like a big name.
My favorite is in Dark Souls 2. Fucking Peter Serafinowicz.
Peter Serafinowicz is in Dark Souls. He's in Dark Souls 1, I believe, as well.
Yeah,
is he? I thought he was only in 2, but.
They actually do the same. I'm gonna drop my favorite video game again, but they actually do the same for Final Fantasy 14. Like most of their dub cast is actually a lot of British theatre actors.
There you go.
Yeah. It's funny. No, I think one of my favorite bits in Spaced is like Simon Pegg not liking Peter Serafinowicz's character because Peter Serafinowicz played Darth Maul in episode 1, and he was like really torn up about the prequels.
Man, you remember when not liking the prequels was just like that if you were to have a stock nerd character on television, like in the late 90s, early 2000s, that had to be their thing, was they were a kid of the 70s who loved Star Wars but hated the prequels.
Yeah, no, it's funny how culture changes, isn't it? And fucking
I mean, God, this is probably for another movie, but I did see a tweet floating around asking like if the sequels were gonna get rehabilitated, like the
sweet. I'm doing it in real time. They're good. Apart from the last
there
one,
are kids who are going to grow up like they grew up with Minecraft story mode, and they're not going to give a shit about our asinine Star Wars opinions.
True.
I still can't get over that guy who was a shooter for fucking games from 2012. Like one of the worst years in fucking games. Like, come on, dudes.
He's not a shooter for 2012 because of the games. He's a shooter for 2012 because he was 10.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, true.
I mean, that's always the case. The people who are shooters for the prequels do it because they were kids.
That's why I'm a shooter for this movie.
Well, I was going to say, speaking of ages, I mean, technically we're going back to a question that I asked right at the beginning of the episode, but Snake, did you watch this OVA before you watched it for this?
Yeah, no, I had this on VHS as a kid. That's why
Wow,
that's why I loved it. Like, I really liked Sonic as a kid, so I don't know how I got the OVA, but I must have just seen it and and just wanted it, like a kid does. Like,
I mean, it came out like this dub came out in '99, like around the time of Adventure. So I imagine like you probably just got it in the same around the same time when
I mean, my parents like they were tuned into what I like was enjoying, so like they probably bought me the VHS, like he'll enjoy this, because I had VHS of like an Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, few episodes of that. You know what's funny is it's funny, I appreciate this, but like, so growing up in Sonic nerd circles, hearing for years about, oh man, Sonic Sat AM was the God, this is a talking point that just fell off, but Swede, you remember it as well. You can attest.
Oh yeah, I remember it. Yeah, no, people were acting. People were acting.
Sat AM so much, like pre. They were saying
they were. This is the one where it's like more serious and the like woodland fights and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
There's
they
even
were acting
like a
like
nostalgia critic episode where he's like heavily critical of Adventures, but like gasses Sat AM so much as like, Sonic,
which is ironic.
Sonic Adventures is made by like an idiot stoner student. Meanwhile, Sat AM is about a real intellectual student would have written.
Yeah,
this.
no, they were.
But I mean, I can understand that from him, because this was that weird era of cartoons where people were really sucking off stuff like Batman the animated series, and then Disney did like a knockoff with Gargoyles, and it was like, oh my god, it's on Saturday mornings, but it's like Shakespeare, it's serious, and then you watch it now, and it's like, guys, this is just Care Bears, but with a great color palette. Like,
no, fuck on. No, I've been watching
that. That is exactly kind of where I'm leading. Where I had years of the Sonic fan base just going like, no, Sat AM, man. Sat AM is what Sonic's all about. This was the cartoon. They nailed it. Fuck Sonic X, fuck Adventure Sonic. Let's do. Then one day I'm a teenager, which is way too late to watch this stuff if you like. Especially if you're in the stage of being a teenager where you really want to be mature. So I see a DVD collection of Sonic Sat AM and I'm like, oh hell yeah, I'm gonna buy that. I'm finally gonna see what this is all about. Which is weird because I had the internet by this stage. I probably could have just pirated it if I gave that much
you
of
fucking paid money for it.
Yeah, I did. I watched 3 episodes. I'm like, this sucks. This is ass. I don't care.
Like it's not good. Like people were gassing it up like it was B-Taz, like B-Taz level of good. Like B-Taz has some really shit episodes I've watched recently, but like it's like
I'll give Batman the Animated Series this. It's got the Monty Python thing of there's so many episodes of it. Most of them are bad, but there's a lot of really good ones. But that's just on the fact that there's a lot of episodes of Batman the Animated.
I was having this discussion with a Monty Python fan the other day. It was like 90% of it is dog shit, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's got some hitters, but it was a necessary step in British comedy. Yeah. I don't know if Batman the Animated Series is similarly a necessary
Batman the Animated Series did have like a genuine effect on, like, again, Disney did Gargoyles as a response to it, and everybody was a little bit like Prestige TV. Everybody kind of fell out of doing serialized stuff and wanted to do more mature stuff, and that happened in animation for a weird little while before they were kind of like,
they bounced back to like anime.
There was a gritty trend in the 90s which Sonic was like in on, as we kind of talk about with this.
I mean, that's what I was thinking of as you were saying that, and even you saying like as those things of you want, like, you don't really want to talk about Sonic because you're a teenager and you want to seem more mature. I think the Sonic franchise is interesting in that, like, Nintendo never really tried to do that with Mario, apart from when he got a tribal tattoo.
I was gonna say cool, the fucking that Game Boy Advance SP Tribal Edition is as close as Mario got to being
quote unquote edgy.
Yeah,
it's funny. I mean, I don't know whether this video will be out by the time this episode goes out, but I'm writing a script at the moment about this Nintendo game that hasn't come out called Acid Ghost, and how people were so fucking gassed for that because it was like, finally, Nintendo were making a mature FPS game. And you read, like, the plan for it, and it just sounds like fucking stupid. But again, like, people have this genuine insecurity of like, well, I want to like Mario, but I also want to be mature. So, like, could Mario like say the N-word? Like, could he start wearing a wife beater and cry? Like, and that's how you end up with shit like Naughty Dog making The Last of Us, and it's actually kind of how you end up with like Jack 2 and fucking Warrior Within and stuff like that.
And Shadow the Hedgehog.
And Shadow the Hedgehog, yeah.
Oh god, that's the early 2000s.
That is the early 2000s. We liked, I don't want to say grimdark. We liked edge. We liked characters to have a bit of grit, but we were really not very clever at it.
We liked Tony Soprano because he was a mobster that went to a shrink, and we liked GTA 3 because you could do rampage mode.
Not actual edge, really. Like it's more just.
But no, I mean, I was having a discussion about this the other day, but I think okay, we can maybe debate this, but. As long as we're not actually talking about the OVA, but I consider Edge to be failed grit, or or comedic grit.
I don't know if
I can understand disagreeing because it's a semantic argument.
Exactly. But
yeah, it's just something that I feel like Edge can be genuine, but more often than not, Edge feels like when you're taking the piss out of something that is failing to be gritty.
Because I was going to say, because in my mind, when I think of this era, I think of new metal and I think of Limp Bizkit, where it seems stupid on the surface, but what they are genuine in. Well, I mean, obviously, fucking Rolling isn't genuine. He isn't feeling pain when he's talking about putting your fucking hands up. But Break Stuff is a stupid song, but it is also he does genuinely he's an angry guy and he feels like he has to get it out of his system, and that is genuine, but it is because it's Fred Durst and it's kind of goofy, you don't really take it serious. It's camp, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. I can see that. Campy Edge. Guess we're getting into more definitions than hair splitting.
No, I know. Yeah. But no, I get where you're coming from though. It does, a lot of Edge does feel, again, it is Shadow the Hedgehog where it's is a guy, it's a guy giving a soliloquy about the fact that, my life is an action movie, except for the people who I kill. Because I'm the monster movie kind of thing. But it's coming from a plush. It's coming from a cuddly toy with a fucking with an M5 that he pumps like a shotgun.
An MP5, yeah.
Sorry, an MP5.
But, they really knew their guns.
But the funny thing about this OVA is just talking about that and going back to the 90s kind of grit is, so you got Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, and Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog is a Looney Tunes-esque comedy. Sonic is a joke character, and his high speed is I'm going to do zany stuff and Eggman can't keep up. I'm going to blow up a balloon that goes up his bum, and then he pops it and it blows up his bum and he flies away.
There's an episode where the Dr. Robotnik builds a sexy robot hedgehog woman to tease Sonic and tells us don't fall for it. And Sonic's no, I'm taking her on a date.
This will really get that Sonic.
There's an episode where Tails eats a burger and it makes him inflate into a big sphere, and kids watching it go, I think I want to see more of this. How can we get more of this?
And how DeviantArt was born.
Yeah, exactly.
And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, and we didn't even get into the Sonic Says segment, which proud on us, but
that's no good. Snake is no good that we didn't get into that.
It's no good. But
that's no good.
Sonic's at AM, which is Eggman's already won, and he talks like he's got a mouthful of gravel and bourbon, and Sonic's on the losing team. They've already lost. They're freedom fighters. It's kind of dark.
It's XCOM 2, basically.
Huh?
It's XCOM 2.
Yeah,
it's XCOM 2. It's XCOM 2, exactly. I'd play the shit out of an XCOM 2 Sonic conversion.
Well, funnily enough, they were making one for one of the US teams was making that for the Mega Drive. Yuji Naka saw 5 seconds of it and said, absolutely fucking not.
No, I've heard that story. It was a stealth game, which, no, Sonic is not for stealth.
I mean, a super speed stealth game is... just as a pitch, that's I would want to see somebody tackle that as an idea.
Maybe it was super speedy, but if you've seen gameplay, it was not.
Oh no, it's
speedy.
not. It is Sonic's tiptoeing around, and this is shit.
It's
guys.
Sonic rendered by way of another world. It's a cinematic platformer.
Which is an odd choice to make, when you have Sonic.
I was gonna say not to go back to talking about the games again, and this is a really quick point that I just want to make, but talking of Sat AM and stuff like that. It is funny that the two Sonic games that are made in the one Sonic game that's made in the States is fucking Spinball, and it is awful. It's not a good game.
Wasn't Spinball and Sonic 3D Blast UK projects?
Well, Spinball was Technical Institute. 3D Blast was Traveler's Tales, which is okay, but that's like a different tone. That's the Brits who seem to be vibing on the sort of like vaporwave stuff that the Japanese team's doing, but going way more into it.
I mean, and to kind of dig into this a bit more, so Sonic Sat AM, bit grimmer, bit darker, bit more drama based. Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, kind of
goofy.
Yeah, goofy. The US comic, that's a lot more kind of in the Sat AM's vibe, but a bit different. And then there's Sonic the comic, the UK branch. And what's most interesting about that is Sonic's characterization, where he's kind of Dennis the Menace. He's a dickhead. He's a horrible. Yeah,
he's a little stinker.
Yeah, he's a little stinker.
Little asshole.
It's kind of again more in the Sat AM vibe, but a bit more kind of British cynicism. I'm not going to say like 2000 AD because that's way too much of a jump, but it's a bit more. It's more British.
It's Beano. Yeah, I get it.
It's Beano. It's ridiculous. It's like dub like that. But one thing I like about a lot of early Sonic characterization is because he's a speedster, he's like massively impatient and like and it's not just like haha funny goofs. I mean it kind of is, but they play it as a genuine flaw in like because he's so fast, he just can't stand people who like won't do things
slow him down.
Yeah, which is funny and interesting.
That really makes that line "you're too slow."
Yeah, it makes it kind of amusing, which. Sonic goes through a weird period of just being kind of stock shonen hero, kind of boring, kind of just goofy jokester. But I like in this that this is a Japanese production, and I think this is a kind of shonen tone, kind of Japanese kind of humor that I like. And obviously any country can do it. I'm not saying it's some fucking bizarre mystical quality, but you get a kind of marriage between you've got comedic slapstick moments, and then you do have moments of genuine drama. They're not forgiven very well together, but they are there.
I mean, there's something that I've always. Well, I mean, I'm not the first person to make this incredibly original observation. I certainly won't be the last. But watching this animation did very much put it in the forefront of my mind. But watching this, it was like, oh, this is Dragon Ball.
Yeah,
as in the tone is Dragon Ball. Yeah.
I mean, funnily enough, I think the head animator of this had done the Dragon Ball movies throughout the 80s. So he had that
Pyro
pedigree.
themselves hadn't worked on Dragon Ball, but the guy who was the lead animator on this had come over from Toei, who were doing that, and worked on this. So.
Yep. I wrote it down. Yeah. The DOP, director of photography, was Ikegami Motoaki, who had worked on the earlier Dragon Ball movies.
There you go.
And just to throw it out there, names of the trivia I've got, the art director was Akashi Saiko, and he was the art director on the Doraemon movies. So that's
cool.
Another
blue guy I like.
That's the pedigree we're kind of.
And also a dick,
here.
like another blue dick.
Yeah.
I guess so,
Yeah, Doraemon is a bit of a dick.
He does earn it though.
The Japanese animation staff had longer lived careers than the English dubbing staff.
Oh yeah.
I was gonna give you this bit of trivia that I learned earlier, but the guy who's the voice of Sonic in the Japanese version is also the voice of Sonic in the arcade game Sega Sonic the Hedgehog.
Huh. That is interesting. Who's the Sonic CD actor? I guess not shared with this. Though. That's
don't know. I know that, and I don't want to. I'm not going to say the word. I'm going to say a nicer version of this word, but it goes to what you were saying about the fact that there is quite a lot of like enthusiasts around the Sonic the Hedgehog series. I did like the fact that Wikipedia had to include as a fact, even though I didn't think it was that particularly interesting. the US dub of this was the first time that Jaleel White did not voice Sonic the Hedgehog.
Now, it's funny because I think on any other discussion about Sonic, that would be a thing, but I thought that was just kind of, it didn't really warrant saying because...
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought as well, of just like, why are we mentioning Urkel? But I feel like if I had different Sonic fans on here and I said that, they would firebomb my house.
That's true.
So indelible to the identity of Sonic. To the extent that when people do Sonic fan films, including ones that star the Nostalgia Critic, they have to get Jaleel White.
God, how are we not talking about that? Well, there's reason not to. But yeah, no, that is the interesting thing, is that for a while, the mid-2010s was this era of I don't want to say starvation, game's still coming out, but I think Sonic fans were they felt particularly impugned and felt like, well, Sega ain't doing it, so we got to do it. And that got us Mania, and that got us a lot of cool stuff. That also got us the Sonic movie, which, had a cameo from Nostalgia Critic and brought back Jaleel White, and was really just kind of a 20-minute promo for something that was never going to exist.
Oh, yeah, no, there was like a shoot film or something like that. Like he legit wanted to just use it as a proof of concept for Hollywood, and it's like, nobody's gonna. Nobody would ever.
There's more than one. There's an odd.
Yeah, there's a few. There's
an odd diaper fetishist who tried to get one off the ground in like the late 2000s.
I'm imagining him being like a Scorsese style, like he's going to like, the Turkish Film Fund to try and raise money for this stuff. But it is for a movie where Sonic keeps filling a diaper, and they show it at Cannes, and it gets like a 20-minute standing ovation. Nicolas Cage is just like, I mean, when I heard the idea of the film, I thought, but when I read the script, I was like, this could be Pig 2, so I need to get involved.
I am gonna get us to do Pig one day, and then Pig 2.
Yeah, we'll do Pig. Yeah,
I've never seen Pig.
I really like Pig. That is genuinely one of my favorite films I've seen in years. Like, no irony.
So since we're talking voice actors, you want to know what the funniest thing about? Because I looked it up. So you know who's Robotnik's voice actor is?
Japanese or American? Because I don't know either, I guess.
Yeah, so the American one is a guy named Edwin Neal. And I was like, oh, what's he done? Okay, he did a few of things. He was in DC Universe, a bunch of stuff like that. But then I saw like, why is he in a Texas Chainsaw Massacre game? And then I realized he fucking plays Nubbin Sawyer from the first Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh my god!
Wow!
Huh.
God.
That is an odd path. I mean, it kind of lines up with what I know about Martin Burke, Sonic's actor, who is a stage actor in Texas. So it was geographically convenient to get.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because isn't that there's the big dubbing house, isn't there, in Texas, which is why like a lot of early anime they all got like twangs to them when they speak.
Yeah, exactly.
From the tech. Yeah.
But that was just so funny to me when I found out. I was like, oh my god, this guy, like, he went from Chainsaw Massacre and then went into anime? Fucking wild.
I mean, is it as funny, though, as the voice of Shadow the Hedgehog also played Donald Trump in The Queen's Cookies? And his Twitter image is Donald Trump taking a selfie with Shadow the Hedgehog.
Oh, that is true, but yeah.
Sorry.
Have either of you seen Chainsaw Massacre?
Not in a long time. I was into slashers as a teenager.
We can put that on the list if you want. I mean, Chainsaw Massacre is kind of a slasher, but it's also mostly just watching people in a house.
Yeah, I mean, it's an early slasher before they worked out we need to see someone die every 10 minutes or we're...
Isn't it the first Wes Craven? Well, I mean, I'm sure he did stuff before that for bloody Roger Corman, but that is like the first big Wes Craven in it.
Yes, I think so. Oh, is it that? Is it what? No, it's Tobe Hooper.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's Toby Hooper. That's right.
Oh, it's Toby Hooper.
I mean, I'm gonna out myself as a pleb, but I was more of a Friday the 13th kind of guy.
Jason is
you know what? I'm gonna out myself as an even bigger pleb. I'm more of a Freddy guy.
No, okay, you know what? Fun. I'll go with you on that because I like the Freddy. Yeah, I'm kind of that too.
I mean, I like the Freddy movies. I liked Friday Night. I like
you know what? I'm gonna out myself even more. I like them as they got worse, as they got stupider, as they became just more.
I mean,
comedies.
they are pretty good, but like, there's something about fucking Jason, especially in the later ones, where he's just so fucking fun to watch. He's constantly confused why he's here.
Oh, are we gonna do Jason X on?
I kind of want us to do Freddy versus Jason before that.
Oh no, so Snake. I watched that. That was one of the first things I watched earlier in the year for my media thread. It is boring.
Is it boring? I liked it.
I mean, we can rewatch it, but it is like early. It is that early 2000s digital wave of horror films where it's nothing really. It's full of pop stars and they don't really do anything. Like the kills are really
but Jason X is good too.
Yeah, Jason X is fun.
Yeah, no, Jason X is
got the best
fun.
ending to one of these films.
I will say, Jason Takes Manhattan is overall kind of boring, but it has some amazing moments.
He does punch a guy's head off.
Yeah, no, it has the radio scene.
Oh yeah, God, it's such a shame that those movies had no budget because they had so many good ideas. I guess Sonic likes slashes too.
So Sonic the Hedgehog.
We're bouncing around here like Sonic does.
I mean, we can sum up the plot incredibly quickly.
Yeah,
which is,
you know what? Let's kind of. Let me just kind of start
let's
going
do it
through
2 hours.
All right,
Snake, you take the wheel. You're
just
some of the hedgehog
interrupt me with topics as they come up, because we're gonna be. Because if I just go through this movie straight, it will take 3 minutes. I'm amazed we've gotten this much, but okay.
You know what? Give us the entire plot, and then we'll break stuff out.
Okay, so begins on a cold open. We've got Robotnik talking to Hyper Metal Sonic, because another element of these kind of adaptations, and a lot of it happened in comics, was whenever a game came out, we got to wrap a plot around what imagery we can get from this game and what Sega will tell us. But this is 1996. Sonic CD was years earlier, so I just thought maybe they just thought Metal Sonic's cool. That's probably our best angle for a plot here.
Metal Sonic's also a boss fight in 3, isn't he?
That's Mecha
Sonic. That is a Metal Sonic, but it's not Metal Sonic.
In 2 as well, but okay, James, here's one that even as a Sonic fan, I can't give a shit about keeping track of, but they distinguish those Metal Sonics as like Mecha Sonic and Mecha Sonic something else.
Jesus.
And in Sonic Adventure, if you go into like Eggman's work base, you can see all of them
they have
in
all the
tubes.
ones floating in the tubes.
Yeah, they keep them as Easter eggs. It's quite cool, that. But yeah, so he's like, okay, this is gonna defeat Sonic. Then we cut to an old man owl who's flying towards the island Sonic lives on, which is a total fucking pigsty. We've got
games in the future.
Yeah, it's got a bunch of trash on it, including the Starship Enterprise has crashed there.
And just a plane
the plane from Lost is also crashed there.
And I guess Sonic and Tails living on that island just decided to gut the plane. It's like, well, get the bodies out. I'm living on this fucking plane now.
Cool.
So yeah,
Sonic's sunbathing.
Sonic's sunbathing. Tails has made a new boogie board. He's
doing the thing that the thing that Mark Zuckerberg does, where it's jetboarding or whatever.
Yeah, jetboarding. And in a characterization that would disgust Sonic fans today, Tails is like, "Yo, I'm gonna go boogie boarding," and Sonic, in his 90s prime characterization, is like, "Nah, man, I'm gonna sunbathe here and listen to some jams.
I'm chilling."
Yeah, like I think that's totally out of step with modern Sonic, who's just constantly like, surfing and doing all crazy stuff, can't sit still. No, this Sonic, he's going to sit down with a cocktail, he's going to listen to some tunes, and he's going to get really pissed off at Tails when he splashes water over him, like boogie boarding nearby.
I mean, Sonic can't swim, so it makes sense.
That's true, that's some old characterization, which came from a misunderstanding that Yuji Naka had that hedgehogs
he didn't think hedgehogs couldn't swim.
No, genuinely, yeah. He had it in his head. He had the belief that hedgehogs can't swim, which is why one of Sonic's consistent character traits, up to the Sonic 2 movie, is a fear of water. That is one of his weird, consistent bits of characterization, is a dislike for it. Which is...
There we go.
Yeah, it's funny, and that's why he drowns often, and why hydroplaning tends to be a recurring feature. Anyway,
I don't know. Hydroplaning makes me think of when like your hair's. Isn't that one of those things that they do for hair loss? Is hydroplaning, right?
Where they blow all your hair off with water, so you
with water jets.
Yeah. Just stimulate the scalp with water pressure.
Yeah, or make hair come out.
Yeah.
Anyways, Owlman,
Owlman, he's flying to the island, but oh no, his engine is on fire, and kind of in an inverse from the start of Sonic Adventure 1, I guess, where. Sonic sees Tails crashing on the beach and he's like, oh no, I guess I'd better go help, and shrugs his shoulders. This Sonic just kind of sees that and is like, I don't care. Let the guy crash and burn. You go deal with it. I'm sunbathing.
Not my problem.
Yeah. He's an owl. He should be able to fly.
It's not until Tails is also in mortal peril that Sonic just kind of springs into action, runs across the island, and then you kind of just get the idea. This is just going to be a movie of set pieces where, like, Sonic lounges about for a bit, and then we get a burst of incredible speed, and then there's a little bit of slow-mo.
Again, that's where I was immediately like, oh, Dragon Ball, because that is a show where 80% of it is just characters standing and their mouths animating, and then for the last 20% you'll have an action scene where they only draw the key poses, and then they'll draw like
big
flashes of movement between them, which is what this is doing for the most.
Sonic is the perfect excuse for that because he takes off at Sonic speed and you see a dash of blue light. He runs and he saves Owlman. I've seen this film multiple times as a kid and now once as an adult. I don't know if Owlman has a name. He's just called Old Man, I guess.
I think he legit is just Old Man. Yeah, he's just Old Man Owl.
Okay, he's Old Man Owl. Okay. And he's here with
sounds like this.
Yeah, he does the kooky old man voice. He has dementia. Like, it's every comedy bit with him is... Yeah.
The comedy points of he has dementia.
Yeah, no. For an owl, this is when dementia was a hoot and a holler, where,
Hey.
I gotta be honest, considering the reaction that another character has later on, I like to believe that the owl was put on that plane to die.
To die. The president's like, I need to get a message to Sonic, but I don't care that much. I need this
hold
staffer
on.
to die.
Is he the president or is he the king? Or is he king president?
No,
he's the messenger for the president.
Okay, oh yeah, so sorry. So go into, alright, so he comes to deliver a message to Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah. And
what is it?
So he's crash landed and he gets the message which is basically, hey, the president wants to see you. So Sonic and Tails get on their plane.
Yeah.
Which their plane is a smaller plane that's not the plane that's the plane that crashed on the island.
Now, unrelated to the film and more related to Sonic franchise stuff.
Uh-huh.
Did they ever explain the plane?
So, not much, but essentially from Sonic 2 manual and some kind of characterization you get in Sonic Adventure, essentially that is Sonic's plane, but Tails saw it and started just working on it, and basically Sonic adopted him as a friend.
Actually, you see it in Sonic X in a flashback.
Yeah.
That raises the question: how did Sonic get a plane?
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, there's a step back that I'm unaware of. Like, where did Sonic get the plane? Did he?
Because Sonic can speak English and stuff, which whatever. But he is also an animal that lives in the forest and seems to live like a nomadic lifestyle for the most part. But he also does have a fully operational biplane that he knows how to fly and maintain, enough to know how to teach a tiny fox to do the same thing.
The only time he ever flies it is like in Sonic
2. If you play as Tails in Sonic 2, Sonic will
Sonic's
be flying
a plane.
the
Is he? That's funny.
It is funny, yeah. Sonic can technically pilot a plane, just that never really comes up because I guess at this point it is just de facto Tails' plane.
Did you ever read the Japanese backstory that they had for it? Because obviously the US one is that his name was Ogleville and he lived outside of Kentucky and he ate like nuclear waste one day and that made him Sonic or something stupid like that, right?
Man, guys, I know why it's Sonic's plane. So basically, it reminds me of how in Sweden, if you're under a certain age, it's actually cheaper to put the car in your parents' name because then the insurance will be lower.
Oh, that's how the plane, the insurance rates on the plane is cheap. Because obviously, in the world of Mobius, full of talking animals and robots and stuff, they also have insurance, right?
I'm James, moving on from that point, do you think Sonic's insurable? He's in life-threatening situations every 5 minutes and runs really fast.
Yeah,
I interviewed at a company that does insurance for weird shit like that, like life insurance on stunt people who do shit for Red Bull and whatever. So there is that you can insure people like that, unbelievably. It's just it's incredibly expensive.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of my point. Is it wouldn't be that much of a saving money to insure it in Sonic's name.
No, and in fairness, Sonic seems to live a kind of an anarchist lifestyle where he doesn't have money. So
yeah, now Sega mandates say that in fiction you're not allowed to involve money.
That's true because it encourages gambling, but they're never going to get rid of the casino levels in Sonic because they're too damn
and
fun.
rings aren't allowed to be treated as currency anymore, which that doesn't seem quite right considering that is literally how it works in Frontiers, but actually is it? Fuck. But there is bartering at the very least. Anyway.
So Snake, you did an episode before where you and a guy read through the American Sonic Bible, right? Or
that was on Commentary Comms years ago, man.
Yeah, it was on ComComs.
Oh
do you remember anything about the American Sonic Bible?
I mean, I read it years ago and I've heard Cybershell read it, and yeah, I've looked at it. But no, it's very weird, and I think none of it really got into the games anyway.
No,
But-
because the Japanese one's even funnier, where it's like they interviewed Naoto Oshima and it was like, what was his backstory? And it has nothing to do with Sonic. It's an American fighter pilot. They gave him the nickname Sonic, and he had spiky hair like a hedgehog, so they drew one on the side of his plane. And then after he retired, his wife started writing children's stories about a little hedgehog called Sonic. It lived on Mobius Island, and it was based on a fucking cool as fuck fighter jet husband. And that's Sonic the Hedgehog's backstory is that apparently he's based on a fictional real guy that doesn't live in Sonic World.
What the? Yeah, that's convoluted as hell.
Yeah, that's it's like Swede, you remember when they were promoting Lightyear and they were like, this is the story of the guy that the toy is based on, and they're like, what?
It's so weird because it's not even like a movie that would come out in the.
But I guess it makes sense,
90s?
yeah, because the Sega, they made Afterburner. It's just like, yeah, Sonic should just have a plane because planes are fucking cool. And
Yeah,
it's
no,
okay,
like,
go
he
fine.
surfs, he plays guitar, he, at one point in early development, had a human girlfriend called Madonna.
Called Madonna,
Yeah.
And they were in a band as well.
Yep, and he has a plane. He can buy plane and do all that stuff, but then, as far as it goes, yeah, Tails just saw his plane and worked on it and then started following him around and they became mates.
Yeah, he became his little mate, Tails.
But yeah,
He was called Tails because he has two tails.
So they fly off and they get to another island which has the White House on it, where they meet the president and his cat girl daughter Sarah, which
Now,
leads to
I
bits.
did notice that when you were talking about animes that Piro had worked on, I noticed that you didn't mention Urusei Yatsura, aka Space Princess Lum, which makes a lot of sense why this fucking anime girl, cat girl character is in this.
Somehow I didn't draw the connection, but yeah, they made kind of a clingy, eccentric, violent girl type, which I'm just gonna say, James, also just popular anime stock character. Is...
But the thing is, isn't that didn't the trope begin with Urusei Yatsura? I'm pretty sure.
Kind of, yeah.
I think Swede's more of an expert on the anime history of.
I don't remember, but I think kind of.
I know that Lum isn't as manic as this character, and as this trope character is, but I think it's more that because she's an alien from outer space, she seems a lot weirder. But also, it does also have the thing of like, haha, she's so funny, she fell over. Anyways, could you draw her ass? Could you draw her ass right at the camera, please? Could you draw her bending down?
Can we have Tails,
like
please?
Okay, Commissioner.
Can we have Tails, the 8-year-old, grope the cat girl? Why, yes. We can get that in this OVA.
Not only are we doing that, that is actually why we're funding this OVA. The Japanese government is throwing 1 billion yen at this to get it over the line.
I also checked, and it's really funny, but I checked who voiced these characters. So the president is still voiced by Edwin Neal. So
yeah, he plays Eggman and he plays the president. What a range!
Meanwhile, Sarah's voice actress this is basically her only role.
And you know what? So, for playing this character, she doesn't do a bad job. I
like the president because he was like a character that I would make in one of our tables.
I can see it. Yeah.
He's just a big fat furry guy who's like, oh, I don't know what to do.
Furry? No, he's not.
He does have.
He is. He's constantly in danger.
Yeah.
I thought you said.
He's just
furry.
he is. He's
well,
a
he is a
cartoon
furry. He has
he's
a
a
dog's
cartoon
nose.
character, but he's in a world where he's got Sonic on one side who doesn't give a crap, Eggman on the other who is incredibly dangerous, Sarah who is utterly bizarre, and he's just trying to hold it together. He's like, Sonic, please do the thing that would save our lives. And Sonic's
I thought he had a cat's nose, Sweet, but if he doesn't, fair enough. I misremembered
he's just a fat elf.
He is just a fat guy. He's not like a
Oh
furry
yeah,
guy.
no, he had elfy ears, and I assumed that he was like a dog.
And
that's fine.
and you understandable because his daughter is a cat girl, which means Mr. President is a freak.
I mean, I didn't want to bring that. I didn't want to bring that up. You know, kids aren't meant to understand genetics yet. It's years later you think back and be like, yeah, he slept with a cat woman, presumably at the very.
Maybe
least.
the males of the species look like that, and the females of the species look like that.
Okay, so maybe that you think they're all kind of cat people, but that's the sexual dimorphism. Is it just?
I think that's exactly
just
it.
Look like humans.
Yeah, no, I think that is exactly that.
Okay, then.
That is
The
Makes
blokes
sense
are
to me.
just fat humans, which is why Eggman is also a big guy.
Well, and hairy as well. They got a lot of facial hair.
Yeah.
Like a cat.
Meanwhile, the women are cat girls.
Yeah.
I can see
we go.
why everyone really misses this OVA franchise. Like, damn, this should have been a full thing. We could have seen so many more.
Fucking MMO.
I feel like we should. You know what? I feel like we should have got like an I say an expert. I feel like we should have got somebody on this podcast as balance of just like they're constantly whispering into the mic. I wish that Sonic like married her and like became her boyfriend. I wish he came back in the other Sonic games.
So another bit of trivia that
cool.
I had to write down. So Ian Flynn has gone on record as saying he has stated he's not allowed to pull any characters or unique elements from the OVA. Sega, like, I think maybe after 06, and I think Sega is just a lot more image controlling than they used to be, given how this really is. Like, basically, this OVA, this is locked up. You can't do anything with this. You can't do anything with its elements or its ideas that are unique.
I mean, I've always said for years that Sega usually do what Nintendo do 2 years after the fact. Snake, what would you say the year is that like it felt like Sega basically finally took a grip on the wheel and kind of said we need to sort of right the ship on the Sonic
so. Here's the thing: I think they've done it jerkily in stops and starts. If I want to say the ultimate date, about 2012 to 2015 is when they.
I was thinking it was it was definitely before Generations came out, which was like what 2012.
Yeah, 2012.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2011, that's here.
Oh yeah, sorry, it was 2011 because it was
earlier then. It could be around the release of Colors, which I can't remember.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, no, Colors is it because that was also when they brought in the new writing team and stuff, and they were like, we need to. Sonic is standardized now. We know that's boring, but we got to stop with the freak shit.
So, I mean, here's the thing. I think it's kind of like a funnel. It just gets thinner, which is in the 90s. You just got like Sega's on top of the world, and they're just like, yeah, do whatever with Sonic. Like, get him as much over the world as we can. Then you get to Adventure when they're like, let's unify a little bit. Hey, there's no more separate US and JP canon. It's not even like they throw it out. They do that via ignoring it. They're just like, this is one story now. And then they're
like, okay, now it's unified. Let's go book wild again.
Yeah, no, they do the Resident Evil thing where they unify, but they go fucking mental with it. They just go crazy. So Adventure 2 is like, okay, well, we may have unified, but now we're going to expand. So now we've got the world government, now we've got presidents, now we've got like conspiracies and plots, then Heroes, then Shadow, then Sonic 06 blows everything up with just how badly it's received.
And they gotta go back to the well and unleash just like that's the start of them trying to do it, but then it's them kind of just focusing on the Wii era and sort of like, well, this seems to be working out for us, so why don't we just kind of put our chips there? So
and then you get the meta era where it's like, okay, all this lore stuff we tried during the 2000s, all this Sonic can be a kind of serious character, hasn't worked. We're a laughing stock.
Let's lighten him up a little bit. Cartoons have now figured out that they can be kind of meta, so why don't we do that?
Yeah, and that's how you get what Sonic fans have started to call the meta era. They don't call it the boost era anymore. They call up to not Unleashed Escape 6. That was written in Japan and was
Lost.
still
Boom, I guess maybe.
I think
Wait,
Colors.
really?
Colors Boom was a part of it, but Colors was the start. Colors to about Forces. No, I think
yes.
It is funny, James. We talk about how people move on. Forces is starting to get critical reevaluation because of Frontiers, so it's funny. People basically go, "Oh no, this was like the first step back towards what Frontiers is giving us," and I can kind of see it. It's bad, but I can kind of go.
See, I'm the opposite. Because it's funny that we in all of this chat we haven't evoked that classic Sonic cycle image. Which again, when I was reading Destructoid, that was when the guys at CERN and NASA had produced that JPEG of the Sonic cycle, which became like the defining image of Sonic discourse for a million years.
Fuck the Large Hadron Collider for sending shit in a circle.
No, it was the Sonic cycle that they invented, which like destroyed discourse forever. Whereas I feel like I'm kind of the opposite, where it's when Sonic does something new, I'm usually more well, actually, no, because the cycle is that, you get excited for the next one, and then it ends up bad, and then eventually when the new one comes on, you look back more favorably on the old one kind of thing.
But we're kind of doing that, but on like I'm an adventure guy. Adventure fans are eating right now, you know? Yeah, but it's that on a 20-year delay.
because you say that we're out of the meta era, and the era I would say we're in now is sort of embracing sort of the shonen elements, but I would say, and I feel like Swede might get a tummy ache when I say this, but it feels like it's being written now by, you know, like all the fucking the Tumblr weebs that wrote like the She-Ra TV series.
You're treading on dangerous ground, man.
I feel like we're kind of in, like, they would call it like elevated, not elevated shonen, but like US based shonen, like that TMNT series where all people do is just post clips of the fight scenes. It feels like Sonic's kind of now in that, where they're embracing those kind of quote cringier elements and going, actually, this isn't cringe, this is cool. And
I do agree with you. I can't even argue. It's like, I think Sega has finally hit the other end of the spectrum where, like, the meta era, as it were, was like, let's downplay everything that people called embarrassing. Let's get ahead of the joke. Let's call out everything a bit silly so that we can control it. Didn't work. It's kind of like trying to win over people who hate you to begin with. You're not going to do it.
Yeah, like, this is where Sega's now in an era where I can't make Nintendo comparisons, because they're very much doing their own thing, where Sega are now in a weird split era where you have them with the 3D games going, let's just kind of do modern shonen. Let's do, like, you know, Studio Mia kind of TMNT style. Let's lean in on the cringe, but, like, you know, be kind of cool about it. But also now let's have a throwback series with, like, Mania and, like, Superstars. And why don't we just have both? And we can basically be like, hey, if you don't like the shonen stuff, we literally have a Sonic that doesn't say anything and lives in a cartoon.
You know what is gonna fuck with you? I think you can therefore make the Nintendo comparisons super cleanly, because that's like 3D Mario is inventive and weird and occasionally a little bit out there.
Oh, so mechanically, yes, I would say
2D
that.
Mario has a very clear lineage, but meanwhile Sonic's doing pure retro and, alright, we'll have the weirdo adventure stuff.
Okay, well, I mean, so mechanically, yeah, I would absolutely agree, because, yeah, to talk about the Nintendo comparisons, they also had to do the thing of unifying the, quote, lore of Super Mario 64 cleans the deck. Then they go fucking mental and make Sunshine. Then they have to have their back to Jesus moment with Galaxy, which, hey, a game where the main character has to go to space and it's like a throwback. Bit like Colors. Weird that.
Oh my god.
Weird.
Then they get into their meta era of like, oh, it's new Super Mario. Oh, the Kanuki suit is back. And everybody kind of now looks at that like a bit like you're being a bit too restrictive there. And now Odyssey, Odyssey's buck wild, which is cool. And then, yeah, they've also now have this throwbackiness of Wonder is kind of like the old games, but they're trying to do a little bit more with it.
I can see what you mean, actually, because I did forget, there was a lot of burnout with the new line of games.
Which is something that I kind of agree with a little bit, but it also feels like people who are 10 years younger than me, they'd like look at those new Super Mario Brothers games and was like, you don't realize how bad we had it. And it was like, those games are fine. They look kind of boring, but they're
fun enough. I beat one of those in co-op with a mate. We had a blast. Like, come on, it's cool.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyways, they talked to
they talked to the president. My God, Sonic,
Mr.
man. I thought this would be like a 2-hour episode max. We're fucking in. All right. But they talked to the president, and Eggman has taken everyone in the room hostage, and he's filled it with really cool mech designs, actually.
Yeah, they are. I do like the mech designs.
Yeah, no, especially I pointed out, like the little guy who mimics him. It's good.
They split a nice difference between where Adventure would go, where it's more like kind of mecha looking, and the old-fashioned ones where it's kind of like spiky, kind of low-color dudes. I think.
It's kind of like,
as they were called.
Yeah,
the Badniks.
It's like a more charming egg pawn.
It's funny, you see the Badniks in this, but they're like bespoke weapon missile things, whereas he's got mech designs.
There's a tortoise and the hare Badnik, which shows like, I wonder what they're gonna do with this.
You saw that and immediately realized the joke. What was going to happen?
It still laughed though when it happened.
I mean, I laughed because I appreciated it, but
it was crafted. It was like when you see an old-fashioned joke and you're just like, I know what the punchline is.
It was like I was watching Who's On First being performed, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I love that bit. So, Basically, Eggman's taking the room hostage, and he's like, okay, so there's a giant metal Robotnik, and he's taken over, like, my slice of the world. Sonic, you gotta go deal with this.
Sonic,
and
I got replaced by an AI.
And Sonic's like, why the hell would I? And then you get a bunch of exposition to explain why Sonic has to go and do this, which is done very quickly, and it's made a joke out of. We're going to talk about meta errors, like Eggman explains, okay, so you understand that we're on planet Freedom, and here's how the planet works. We're in the land of the sky, and it's a land below. Sonic just goes, yeah, tell me something I don't know. You know, classic comedy bit of exposition. And that's kind of something that I think I was going to talk about if we hadn't kind of covered all the ground of, like, so you got Mobius, and then in the JP thing, it's just Sonic's from Easter Island. And yeah,
I thought it was. Wait, wasn't it Christmas Island?
It's Christmas Island. Sorry, yeah, he's from Christmas Island.
It's like in The Nightmare Before Christmas, where he goes and he finds all the trees with the different holidays on it. It just takes you to different holiday islands. But...
So, you know, in this one, it's like it's Planet Freedom, and then a game comes out.
Called Freedom Planet?
Yeah, years later, 20 years later, maybe about 2016. So
yeah, so you missed a detail, which is why. So why should I go and fight this metal robot? Well, he's being piloted by Metal Sonic, and I designed Metal Sonic that he has exactly your brain patterns. So you're the only person.
You're jumping ahead a lot.
No. Is that jump? Oh, I thought that was why he said to go fight Metal Sonic.
I mean, you're jumping ahead a bit, but yeah, basically, he talks him into it. Sonic's gonna go down, and then you get a cool set piece, which is just. As a kid, this was the moment of I loved where it's basically just a Sonic stage animated. You know, he's just he's doing a lot of super speed. He's going up springs and he's dodging spikes, and that's kind of a lot of this movie is. I do like the talky bits because I like Sonic's characterization in this as just a dickhead. He's just funny.
But do you like his voice?
You know what? It's not the worst. I don't mind it.
Like when I think of Sonic the Hedgehog, I think of if gone to my head, if they told me I had to make a Sonic game and I had to make a choice of like what he would sound like, I would probably just say no voice. I would probably just say character animation because that's going to age better. But if I had to give him a voice, I would probably just go with the one that I always associate with him, which is, you know, oh yeah, this is happening, you know,
so
Sonic Adventure.
Ryan Drummond or Jason Griffith.
I don't even mind the guy who plays Chris Redfield. You know what? I would get the Chris Redfield guy, but I would make him do the Chris Redfield voice.
There you go. I don't mind.
We gotta go and fight Eggman.
I don't mind. I don't mind.
Isn't that Roger Craig?
I think
it is Roger Craig Smith.
Yeah, isn't that his normal voice? Isn't that
so in Frontiers he uses his so there's a fucking talk where he was saying about with Frontiers, Sega said, oh, we want to do something a bit more mature, so could you like lower his voice? And he's just like, Tails, we have to stop Eggman. Lower. Tails, we have to stop Eggman. Lower. Tails, we have to stop Eggman. Lower. Tails, we have to stop Eggman. That's perfect. And he was like, that's just my normal voice.
No octaves whatsoever on this bad boy.
Yes, it's just his voice.
He's just,
I forgot he's
Ezio
as well.
frying it. He's just like Billy West just doing his normal voice.
Where he was like, I was playing how I was when I was in my 20s as a dork, which, good story with that. But, yeah, I mean, but the Sonic voice in this is, he sounds like a dork.
He sounds nasally. Like
he sounds like he is asking. He sounds like he's saying, "Sir, I forgot what you ordered for your McDonald's. Can you remind me?"
I will say this: I kind of like it. I do kind of like it. It's not well acted. I mean, as I said, it was made by a 16-year-old, but it is funny because Sonic is so rarely actually played by a 16-year-old, which is his age.
Yeah, which is weird that he hangs out with an 8-year-old, but let's not worry about that.
Let's not worry about it. You know, he's a fox. Let's not go down this road.
He's a fox.
He's a fox. You know, it's like dog years. It's a bit older, isn't it?
Well, no, I thought it was like, you know, when you see like a handsome man, it's like, he's a fox.
No, I am not saying that. I was making a dog years joke. I'm not saying that.
But Tails should be voiced by the guy who played Gex in the British version of Gex.
Absolutely, I am saying that. I am not saying that.
Sorry, go ahead.
So sorry. Yeah. And they get to like Robotropolis. They get to, you know, a big dark set piecey New York style city, very Terminator inspired. And they have a big action set piece against, you know, Metal Robotnik. He's massive. And you get just a bunch of lore jokes and like comedic action set pieces, like Sonic getting stuck in a goo gun and they're on top of a building that gets struck by lightning, running down a highway as bullets blast.
He has the honey gun.
He has the honey gun. Sonic almost drowning, and then really that's just it. I could just say insert action scene here. It's filled with callbacks. Sonic flips Sim off. Tails' fear of lightning, which is like a very deep pull to like a character bio, is brought up.
Yeah. Again, like this is where this feels like because they did it. Well, no, they didn't do it in house at Sega, but because they did it in Japan, they were probably better in communication with the people who made Sonic the Hedgehog that they could talk about this stuff. Versus, again, I like the stupid cartoon one in the United States where it's basically like, oh, he's a funny animal. You should have a hot dog eating contest. That'd be funny or something like that. You know.
Yeah, no. I mean, like, there's the funny thing about this character is this coalescence of, like, Japanese and American influence.
You were saying, like, you know, in the States you have this separation between the funny and the serious. This does the Dragon Ball thing. You have funny Sonic and you have serious Sonic, because this action scene is flipping. It is wildly flipping between, you know, Tails falls over and farts, and then they just show a cool profile of a robot in shadow and it's sick as fuck.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
you go from this robot that looks hype as hell, like it's shot in shadow silhouette, super contrasty shadows, so he looks really imposing and really
Very
stark.
Terminator.
But then,
Yeah. And then he's firing his machine gun at them as they're doing bits, like just dodging machine gun fire and laughing at him and making him like stub his, like Sonic kicks him in the head and hurts his leg, and it's like a joke, and it's like cool.
but even the design of the robot itself is like, it's funny to look at because it's just a big sphere with a head on it like Dr. Eggman is, but you light him correctly and you put him in the right situation and it is imposed. Like, it goes... I think it goes to show a little bit of something that the games do pretty well, which is, again, that faux kind of pre-rendered CG look that the older ones have. You can do, like, you throw a bit of cool lighting at something and it does completely change the tone, which I think that Sonic CD is a game that I don't particularly like, but I will say the acid reuse in that, where they show Bad Future by just changing the palette, is really impressive.
I do think as well, you can kind of pull it out to the entire kind of character design on some characters, not all of them. This doesn't work on Tails, it doesn't work on Knuckles, but I think Sonic is the perfect showcase, and probably why he's so confusing to represent, which is Sonic can be cute or cool. He can be both, but it's like the way you play him, the way he's posed, the way he's lit. Sonic can look either like really cool, really fast, like skateboarder dude, or he can just look like a goofy Looney Tunes character, just depending on how you proportion and light him.
Yeah, no, like
it is an impressive feat. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
And that in this robot, kind of represents that on an extreme scale, where this robot can be intimidating or a fat guy who's in a comedy bit.
He can, because the robot even has a cape, and like it's always the stupid thing of why would you give a robot a piece of clothing?
Because
it's
looks
because sometimes they could use it to look like Batman in his time, and then sometimes the cape gets stuck on something and they look like Superman or Superman or whatever his name is from Dr. Slump. You know?
Yeah, but like it also just looks fucking cool with a robot with a cape.
It's a cool robot. It feels like you should have him on your shelf, Swede.
They've never made a figure.
Get one of these, a figurine of this, though I doubt any figurine of this exists.
There might have been like a fan-made kit, but never.
Speaking of fans, though, because when Sonic and Tails are at their lowest point during this fight,
oh boy,
they do get a little help from a friend of all.
They do get by with a little help from their friend Knuckles.
Who he's digging around in a hole, which is something that animal is very famous of doing, but doesn't really do in the games themselves until Adventure. And it is our good friend Knuckles in a hat.
Yes, the hat.
Now, why is he wearing the hat?
I have no earthly idea, but that is like the thing in this film that everyone loves is that hat. Like, that hat is
a good hat.
The biggest cultural relic of this movie is Knuckles
to the
wearing
extent
a hat.
of the fucking Knuckles spin-off TV series on Paramount Plus. He's wearing the hat.
Yeah. No, like what you said earlier, Snake, about Sega not allowing anything to be referenced.
No, I know that I said that remembering that is this weird exception where the hat was allowed to escape.
Yeah, and I think also yes, that's probably innocuous, like because it's a Knuckles design. There probably is like just a lot of rights issues. Like you said, this has never been re-released, has it?
No,
I'm imagining it like in Raiders of the Lost Ark, where he runs away from the big ball, and then the doors closing behind him, but he just has enough time to grab his hat. That was this OVA, but it was with Knuckles' hat.
So there is a few weird bits of trivia to get into there. So Swede, what you were saying with essentially like this hasn't been re-released. No, basically from 2004 onwards, a re-release of this is pretty much impossible because Sega lost a lot of documentation to do this film. Basically all to do with royalties. So if they put it out, they have no idea where money for actors and music should go.
Weird that has happened twice with Sonic related stuff, huh?
Yeah, very funny that.
Yeah, very weird that.
So yeah, this film just legally can't be re-released, and I guess that's why just on Sega's largesse they don't destroy it from YouTube that often. They're just like, well, we can't profit, we can't do anything with this, so it's just a sign of goodwill to not destroy it because there is really no means of redistribution for it. As for Knuckles, so I went through just a bunch of odd stuff. So this had a DVD release, before the 2004 cutoff. And one of their bonus features, and I've got two written down, and one of them is for Knuckles, which is the only thing I found interesting, which was the DVD bios for characters calling him a mole. It's not very interesting, but there we go, which is, a character... something that digs, and also in the movie he's a treasure hunter, which I guess is a character element that just became,
that kind of becomes part of the thing of in Sonic Adventure, is he's kind of a little treasure hunter.
Yeah, and also
I was going to say that characterization kind of got split off for like Rouge, but yeah, he is a treasure hunter.
Yeah, and also Snake. I think Sarah does actually call him a mole. One line in the movie.
Does she? I don't. Huh.
Yeah, I remember we were watching it. Yeah, I think she does. I mean, we talked a bit over it.
We were chatting over the film, I'll admit. So, but I
wonder as well with the fact that he's an echidna, which is like, isn't that like only one of like 50 marsupials that exist in the world, and they all live in fucking Australia? Do you think that was where Mark Cerny got the idea of like? He then went over to Naughty Dog. And they were like, "We need an animal," and he was like, "Oh, let me tell you about these fucked up mammals that they have over in Australia, and you can pick one of those guys." Oh, Knuckles could have led to Crash. I could see that.
Could lead to Crash. Oh, yeah. I mean, marsupials, maybe we just need to give every marsupial a mascot platformer and see what takes off.
Yeah, true. There was, they nearly made Willy the Wombat. Wombats are, wombats are marsupials as well. Isn't the weird thing with marsupials is that they all have like pouches that are just like exposed wombs essentially.
Yeah,
that they
like birthing
they have their young too early.
Like, fucked up.
What a weird fucking country with such funny ass animals.
And meanwhile, echidnas, like, what's interesting about them is like
a four-headed,
four-headed penis.
Which, when are they going to reference that in the?
Yeah, no, there's been no Sonic lore that has really dug into the four-headed penis, and I frankly think that's what Sonic has been missing.
I've heard a lot of fans say exactly that. A lot of dedicated fans on DeviantArt have been pushing for that.
Sonic Retro has been banging this drum for 20 years.
20 fucking years.
That's actually going to be my exhibit this year for Sage 24. Is the Knuckles game that finally tackles that? It's a Tetris game.
It's going to be like the maze in Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time is which head do you go out of?
Oh, what a pull. When you said maze, I thought you meant the maze from Max Payne.
Yeah, the baby maze from Max Payne is Knuckles Knuckles pissing blood out of his four-headed penis and you've got to walk down it. What a horrible image.
So, Knuckles turns up with his four-headed penis and he says something Tails.
And his hat.
And his cool hat.
Yeah.
It's a very fun hat.
So, it's a good hat.
Saves the two of them, and what is the connective tissue where they take down the robot and then they see a giant Robotnik building in the distance?
Yeah, so they see the destroyed. Yeah, because when Eggman is explaining to him what happened, you do get a flashback of that factory as well, right? Before it's destroyed, so they know where to go.
Yeah, they defeat the robot, and that's it's funny because this is 2 episodes of a series crammed together. They all unite up, and it's like, yo, let's go to that building, and they all have a character shot as they go, and it's like, this is where credits would roll if this had become a series, and this was episode 1.
When we watched this together, that was also when I made my very snotty animation comment of, this is what a lot of Japanese studios did at the time, where they just airbrushed a really big photo and then had on a cell just a character standing like they're flying. And then they would just move that airbrush photo up slightly so it looked like they were flying over it. To the extent of, Knuckles flies in this, but he flies like Dracula. As in, he doesn't have a flying or like a gliding pose. He can just fly while standing up. It's fucked.
I mean, it's funny because in this moment, Sonic just kind of flies as well by spin dashing in midair. So it's like, yeah, they were really... Sonic isn't that limited compared to his mates in this one. He's just all over the place.
Yeah. Oh dear. Anyway, so they get inside Robotropolis then.
Yeah, they go to Robotropolis. They go to a big building with Eggman's face on it, which I'm going to say that's a design motif throughout the series I like, is Eggman just designing stuff that looks like him. It's always
again,
it's so good.
It's Toriyama.
Yeah.
That was like that was a Dr. Slump thing, was that people's houses look like them, their faces. So there you go.
Yep. They head over to that building. They get on a giant treadmill. And basically, they have to activate a device, and Sonic gets trapped in this weird holographic display, which downloads his data and whacks it into Hyper Metal Sonic. And that's where, basically, the part that everyone thinks about, the big kind of thing everyone loves about this is Metal Sonic's characterization as Sonic's, I don't want to say original rival. I mean, it is. Sonic's original and best, debatable. I like Metal Sonic as a rival because he's very straightforward. He doesn't really do it in this one, but there's kind of a thing that I really like with Metal Sonic as a rival, which is just kind of the early games being very kind of nature versus technology.
Machine. Well, I mean, Dr. Eggman is a roboticist. He's a badniks.
So I don't want to say message, but imagery. So just a metal version of Sonic is just, oh, cool, you just the perfect flip on this idea.
It's an interesting corruption as well as the thing that I was saying earlier, where those Mega Drive Sonic games have that, they almost looks like pre-rendered CG a little bit. Metal Sonic is like the ultimate kind of endpoint of that, of like how, if they were to design a Sonic that was so into that it would be kind of scary looking, that's Metal Sonic essentially. Like, it looks like they could have given it to the Sega Institute and they would have made him look like Vector Man, which was, similar thing that they were doing on a lot of Mega Drive games, where they do a lot of like robot looking characters because you could do that kind of smooth garage shading, and that's like what Metal Sonic looks like, which is a cool idea. I mean, and hey, who doesn't love a bad guy who is just the good guy but like evil, basically?
Or metal. Or a robot.
And it's just this kind of cool thing where, I don't know, it's like a weird thing with Sonic's design, but Sonic has that kind of patch of skin or like peach, fuzz, whatever on like his
it's his exposed belly like a hedgehog, but then on Metal Sonic it's a turbine.
Yeah, and that's how you give justification to his speed, which is like, oh, that's a cool little character extrapolation. That's how you kind of sell the idea that this is how this guy is as fast, but can also just fly and use all of his limbs independently of going that fucking quick.
And it's a thing of, and I don't know how much of this is just kind of down to the thing that we were saying earlier, that Sonic CD wasn't really properly in people's hands for years and years, so there is that level of unicorn mythalization. It felt like Metal Sonic was kind of this untouchable guy that, even though he was the bad guy in Heroes, it feels like people forget that a lot. Yeah. And so that when he appears in the future games, I feel like his characterization is pretty good, because like he has this nice opposite quality now of where Sonic's like a too cool for school chatterbox. Metal Sonic doesn't say anything. He's just like this quiet, like spooky ass guy, which I think again adds kind of nicely to the character.
Yeah. And you got nature versus technology, and you got chatterbox, cool and cocky versus like cold and mechanical and just kind of uncaring. It's very, very it's a nice, simple kind of character contrast.
Yeah, I would say he's a better villain than Sonic with a gun and future Trunks, which are the other Sonic. And then eventually, what are some of the other shit bad guys that we've had? So we've had the Furious 7 or whatever the fuck they're called.
The Deadly Six.
The Deadly Six, who literally look like they're from a Spanish CG cartoon that you see on holiday once and go, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, no, like in just like
what
even
the
the
fuck is
Sinister
the red guy
Six
called? Like Thorax, Foreskin.
Yeah, he's called Thor because he's all
Thor. No, he's like he's in fucking Forces.
Yeah, I know. Zavok.
Zavok, yeah, that's it. There's Chaos, which is like, again, Yuji Naka going, hey, I've written this liquid shader. We have to put it in every point of this game. Sonic can't swim. Oh, yeah, fuck. Okay, fine. The final boss is made out of liquid because I just saw Terminator 2 and I want to put that in this. I want to show off how powerful the Dreamcast is. Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
And then who's the other bad guy in?
Shadow is Sonic's next rival, and then it goes on and on. Then you got Jet the Hawk from the rivals, and you got Knuckles. Knuckles is the besides Metal Sonic. I guess you could either Metal Sonic or Knuckles. I think you wouldn't be wrong in calling either of those the first rival, depending on your terms.
But then Knuckles does get what's it called?
Like he becomes a friend.
Yeah, he becomes his mate. Like he he gets. I can't remember what the term is, but Metal Sonic never becomes his mate.
Yeah, he never gets redeemed, quote unquote, or like.
Yeah, there we go. That was he never gets redeemed. He never learns the error of his ways because he's a robot. Beep boop. So
yeah, he kind of does in this, but like with a lot more finality. And then that kind of gets into it. But yeah, basically, Metal Sonic is brought to life. Eggman appears and he glows. Eggman's characterization in this also kind of toes that funny comedic line where between like he's serious and imposing, and he has a very good voice actor. Very kind of
he's
puts a lot
easily
of
the best
gravitas
one.
into it, which also pairs very well with the fact that then he is just a slapstick bit guy.
So I was going to say we did forget the fact that during this cool fight scene in Robotropolis, because they were worried that people might get bored and not horny enough to watch this, they occasionally cut to Eggman, who is traveling in his little egg carrier. Like, what do they call his? What do they call that thing that he says? Sorry, Eggmobile just cracked me up, but that's a good name. So he's in the Eggmobile with Lisa for some reason, or Sarah for some reason.
They're flying down. No, so. Like, at some point, Metal Robotnik crashes... Oh, yeah, we forgot all this. Sorry, this is a very short film, but it's very compact. But yeah, basically, Metal Robotnik crashes through the president's, like, Oval Office.
Through the White House.
Yeah, through the White House, as Sarah and Robotnik are playing a virtual fighting game, and Sarah just excitedly runs in, and Eggman chases in, like, no, don't touch any of that, and door closes, comedic bit over, cut to a robot with a sign saying goodbye, Sarah, and the president going, oh no. Not my daughter.
Oh no, my daughter!
Oh, my daughter's getting kidnapped.
She kind of walked into it herself, but
she kind of has it coming, but she has to be in bits later in the film.
But yeah, but so their relationship is like stupid because it keeps going from little bitty if you're not careful, kind of like, and her being scared, and then her just being like just knocking shit out of Eggman.
Yeah, no,
and being like,
you have to have
so
that.
emasculated.
You kind of have to be a 7-year-old or just the biggest suspension of disbelief to go between. Oh no, he's got Sarah tied up, and then she just beats the shit out of him for making like.
You also have to be the biggest Kuma in the world because there's multiple shots of her trying to escape from the Eggmobile and her ass is just right up there. So.
It's also
she's a multi-layered character, and the layers are gooning, comedy,
gooning bait, comedy, and peril.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
those are the three corners of the food pyramid of this film. Peril, comedy, Guna bait.
Drama.
To make a great anime, you must perfectly balance these three ingredients.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. You need some Guna bait.
I'm not wrong. Folks, I'm not wrong.
No, and
all the best anime I've ever watched, I was crying, I was laughing, I was a little erect. So it has to be it has to go.
I I mean, I watched Pluto when it came to Netflix, and I wasn't hard through any of it, which I appreciated.
You appreciate you sat there at the credits going, you know what? I wasn't hard at any point. That's good.
Yeah, it would have been uncomfortable sitting for that long.
I will, you're not wrong.
I'm never wrong.
Meanwhile,
I've never
X,
been wrong. I used to work in the record store.
If you watched all of Sonic X and got to the end of it and you realize at no point were you even slightly horny, how would you feel?
I'd feel good about that, because imagine if you were horny if you were horny at any point during Sonic X, you should be on a list.
You hear that, Guptil?
I don't know who that is.
Don't worry, no one does but me and Sweet.
Okay, good. All right.
Oh my god.
That's a joke for 5 people in the world.
Speaking of 5 people in the world, we're talking about gooning, and then I remembered that there's a Sonic guy called the fastest thing alive, and I'm just laughing about that.
The fastest thing alive can't be a gooner.
Yeah, you genuinely can. I hope you're enjoying this podcast, the 3 hour and 3 minute mark.
Yeah, well, we're halfway through a 50-minute fucking feature.
We're never making a fucking short podcast. I thought this was gonna be like 2 hours.
I thought it'd be 2 hours and then we're playing EDF6, but no.
I think we both aren't because we have work tomorrow.
We'll play EDF another day. They'll wait for us. They'll have to. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I put my hands up and I say we will get to the end of this. So there's really not much more is the thing. This second episode is incredibly slight, I say, as if the first episode wasn't when you get down to it and don't divert. It's mostly
Sonic and Metal have a fight.
They do.
Right?
And Sonic gets the hell beaten out of him, which is something that is kind of just funny. Is I think I don't want to get into boring power scaling things, but I do think it's funny that at this point Shadow is just kind of just in every kind of appearance where it's like, oh no, Shadow could just beat the hell out of Sonic if he wants. Unless it's the finale, then Sonic can, like, clutch it out. But otherwise, like, Shadow's just the guy who'll beat the hell out of you. Which is why I'm kind of...
storytelling.
People are waiting for, like, Sonic 3, Maria for getting to get shot, which, I'm there with you. I'm like, yeah, that's going to be really fun. There's going to be rooms full of, men in their 30s who grew up playing Sonic who are so hyped to watch this child get fucking blown away by a gun. And by gun. But
oh my god.
I'm also just kind of hoping we just get a scene where Sonic just gets fucking battered by Shadow. Just ran right fucking through. That's going to be great. That's what
I just like the fact that he's voiced by Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, I'm on board for that. That's pitch perfect. I'm kind of sad that Christopher Lloyd isn't playing Gerald Robotnik. That was my, I want him. But we gotta take what we can get.
Does Lloyd even still act? Or no, he did.
He does television now and again, but he's
getting on, yeah. So yeah. I just think if in his 70s, I think that would have been. He's in his 70s actually, isn't he?
No, he's in his 80s. So Christopher Lloyd.
Goodness. Okay, yeah, but old. I feel 10, 15, 20 years, he would have been pitch perfect to play Gerald Robotnik. But
because he was in his 40s when he did Back to the Future, right? And that was 40 years ago. So
oh my god. Okay, never mind.
I mean, I think it'll just be Jim Carrey in makeup. Because I'm trying to think who's slightly older than Jim Carrey, who's also kind of on that comedian bent who could do Gerald Robotnik.
I genuinely can't think of anyone. Christopher Lloyd.
Steve Martin.
Steve Martin
would not fit the look of Gerald Robotnik.
And yeah, Steve Martin's a bit too clean cut looking. He's a bit too...
Yeah, no, and he's also too... Yeah, he hasn't got those angles that, Jim Carrey has that you would think. The only relative those two guys have is one of the 7 mothers from Pangea. They have, no genetic material in common.
Yeah, no, it's they are as far as a human split as you can get.
They're as far as 2 white guys could possibly be from one another genetically.
Yeah, no, I genuinely have got no one else in my mental Rolodex for who would I get to play Gerald Robotnik, which is a small
the other guy from Three Amigos, the little guy who's in Clifford.
It's a sad thing he passed away it's a sad thing he passed away regardless, but another Lloyd, Sam Lloyd, if he was a bit too goofy. But he had the
Sam
hair.
Lloyd?
Sam Lloyd was the lawyer in Scrubs.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Fair.
Anyway, sorry.
Anyways.
This episode is very slight. It's funny where I'm just thinking about when I watched as a kid, I saw no pacing issues because you just love it. It just feels as big as it needs to feel. As an adult, you watch it and you're like, man, it's kind of meager. Like, you know, there's Sonic gets the hell beaten out of him, and then you essentially have like 15 minutes of we need to save money, so we're just gonna have talking and bits as like, okay, Sonic got the hell beaten out of him, we've lost track wherever the hell he is. Let's go back to Sonic's house. Oh, Metal's been here and he's dressed up Old Man Owl in Sonic's favorite clothes, which are
Oh yeah, no,
which are a perfect fit for the owl. Who, for the people at home who don't know what this guy looks like, he's like 3 times the size of Sonic.
Yeah, he's a giant fat owl man. He's great.
Yeah. And he's dressed up in 90s neon pink skater gear with a skateboard and a backwards cap, and he looks cool.
It's great. I think that is probably, you know what, I feel like in this movie, there are people like, oh, cool fight scenes, and then everything else is people who are like, this bit character who was just a joke, he is the best part of this, and it's Owlman or the President.
You know what, though, this thing I'm going to say, the owl is the second best dressed person in this film, because we haven't got to the first yet.
Oh boy, okie dokie. So, well, build excitement.
I mean, Sweet, you know who I'm talking about, because we're talking about Sonic and Tails and Knuckles and whatever. But there's 2 characters that we haven't mentioned in a while.
Oh yeah, right.
So,
Snake, what's Sarah and Robotnik up to?
So they're flying to the North Pole because there's a bunch of talks going on. It's like, Hyper Metal Sonic's going mad. He's gonna go to the poles and he's gonna just break free a lava flow, which will destroy planet freedom. And it's like, man, that feels like something that should be more heavily guarded. But given how well the world is being preserved in, you know, the real world,
yeah,
a bit more pessimistic that we would be so keenly aware of something so fragile.
And with this fucking president, too.
Yeah, and with this president, I can imagine he was lax on the security budget when it came to, oh, if someone just breaks the ice here, we're fucked.
Yeah.
I'll your son, Sonic.
Sonic will help us.
So
I hope he's not sunbathing.
They're all just kind of like doing, like, Tails has broken apart this wristwatch that Eggman gave him to like, oh, I'm gonna recalibrate this and that will tell me where fucking Metal Sonic is. And the president is like, oh, where's Sarah? Where's thing? Sarah and Robotnik, they're on a ship and Robotnik's basically doing the plot of Mario Odyssey years earlier. Is like, hey, I'm gonna marry you. Like,
so he knows that Sonic's gonna save the day and that's gonna protect the planet. So Eggman's basically like, well, I want to be the president one day, and there's only one real way that I can do that, so let's get married immediately. And he is one dapper fella.
Oh, he is. He's dressed in a sky blue tux.
Yeah, his sky blue tux with a bow tie, and she's in a wedding dress.
She's put on the wedding dress before questioning, wait, hang on, what's going on here? Also, in just more uncomfortable implications, how did she change? Let's mental backspace this one. Fuck that.
I thought you were going to say in a weird implication, I don't think it's a white wedding dress, so she's technically not a virgin.
My God. I didn't even think of that implication. That's just adding on here.
Yeah, that's some Catholic law for you, Swede. Yeah, you can only wear a white wedding dress technically if you're a virgin.
I did not know that.
Sarah.
Yeah. Sarah,
good on you,
Sarah, what have you been up to?
What have you been doing? Please don't. Well, she didn't do it with Robotnik based on her reaction, so that's good.
Oh yeah, I forgot about his big ass bow tie. God, he is dapper, isn't he?
He's so dapper.
It's a good fucking. Like,
that is the image we're using on the episode when it goes.
Yeah, that's the image. That's the Eggman.
The
he has the master plan, which is getting married to a cat girl.
Yeah, so he can eventually become the president.
Yeah,
who is way younger than him. Let's not think about this anymore.
And maybe you know what? He could just be 25 like Mario. Just.
That's true. Yeah, but he's just maybe he's just maybe he's just fat and. There's a lot of young guys who go bald early.
He's been working making robots. He's like rough hewn. He's been around it.
Also, just looking at this, now Eggman is easily the best animated character in this.
He's just a bunch of circles that you could just perfectly pop a face on and mustache.
He genuinely, that's what I mean. He's like a perfect, like when you think of like those early CG demos where it was like people made out of spheres like juggling balls. That is Eggman, you know?
Yeah.
Yes, expression-wise, he's so good.
Yeah, he's funny. Either way, it's a Sonic and Metal Sonic. What are they?
Well, yeah, then it's kind of like, oh yeah, Sonic, I'm actually alive, and we're heading to the North Pole. Or the poles, rather. So that's kind of where we head, and that's where we get our big climactic, basically 10-minute long fight scene. Well, no, not 10 minutes long, about 9 minutes long, which just crams a ton of characterization and Guna jokes in there. I don't want to say Guna jokes, but it is bizarre how much Sarah just gets passed around for bits in this, and I say passed around, like
literally, she falls off Eggman's flying egg machine. Then she she ends up being like accused for a joke of Tails touching her boobs.
Yeah, no, like Sonic like fucking bicycle kicks Metal Sonic through the Eggmobile, and it just comes up, beneath her dress, and she's kicking it and calling it a pervert, and I'm like, you can't make this these days, even though you can make this these days.
Yeah, no.
Oh, they don't make them like this
They don't
anymore.
make them like they used to.
I will say
those wokies came in and stopped us making anime as great as this.
I will say though that the Tails grabbing her breast joke does have a good Knuckles line. Just Tails.
I never thought you'd stoop this low.
Isn't there a famous thing in like Japanese anime, and I can't remember if it was Evangelion or something else, but isn't there a story of basically the animation studio said we can't fund this unless you put fan service in it?
I'm pretty sure that's a lot of anime.
Yeah, I know it is a lot of anime, but there is like a famous example of basically like they had to add like stupid sex elements to it in order to sell it, and then that became the famous thing that then like people latched onto. But
I mean, it's funny. It's kind of like a filter, because on the opposite end of the spectrum, you got a lot of very raunchy visual novels who are like, hey, take all the sex out and we can sell this on the market. Which, you got two ends of the spectrum, which is, hey, sex this one up a bit, and hey, sex that one down a lot.
Yeah, no, like a lot of visual novels just straight up as sex scenes just plastered into them just because that would sell.
Meanwhile, wasn't it like Fate? He didn't want to have sex scenes, but then I don't even know, man. It's
I think that maybe that's what I'm thinking of is that Fate he didn't want to do it, but they basically said if you want this to sell, you have to put like shit fan service in it.
I get it's a wide industry. Some people are being told to take the sex out, some are being told to put it in. There's only so much sex and you got to ration it, and some of it was used up by the Sonic OVA.
It's like in World War II, we had to ration the sex in the UK.
Yeah,
there wasn't enough to go
Remember
around.
to recycle your sex.
Mary Berry actually
recycle it.
used to give people recipes for how to make their sex last long. No, but yeah, it's weird. It is like, it just makes you realize that like, people complain about stuff over here where it's like they had to add like multiplayer to games in order to get them funded and stuff. Over in Japan, they had to add tits to stuff in order for the fucking like otakus to buy it. So.
And like basically Sonic and Metal have like a big like action fight scene. They're going through the poles.
Yeah, very very old fashioned anime. I thought because it was very like
it's a lot of speed lines and then explosions. Like there's
I will
a speed
say,
line to a place.
It's strong keyframes with a tiny bit of tweening between them, and then they like flashes of movement.
Yeah, I actually think this was earlier, but like I think still my favorite moment, like in the fight scene, is just the scene where Metal he's standing upside down, turns his head around to look at Sonic, and just fucking just a 720 around kick.
Oh
yeah,
no,
I
is a cool
think that was earlier, but that is like a perfectly cool. That is a moment that is both really funny and actually genuinely really cool. Just Sonic just fucking showing up like, hey, I'm just you, but I can do all this shit. Fuck you.
Yeah, exactly. I have like no joints, so I can just like completely rotate my body around and do.
I have many joints.
Kind of undercut by a very very funny thing, like in this scene, which is the most iconic line of the movie. Like the hat is the most iconic visual element. Is so they run into each other at the poles, and Sonic has basically. Because this is 2 episodes and has to be super tight, if this was longer, you'd get Sonic like making a bit of a battle strategy for, okay, he beat me once, how do I batter him? But because this is 2 episodes, that has to be contained in the line of Sonic going, you may know everything I'm going to do, but that's not going to help you because I know everything you're going to do. Strange, isn't it? And then he screams and there's another explosion.
the delivery is really good on it.
The delivery is a lot better. You just go and watch this film on YouTube and just hear him fucking deliver that through gritted nasally teeth.
Strange, isn't it?
Strange, isn't it? And then he screams. Kaboom.
Yes.
So
And then boom.
this kind of just runs through a whole character arc, which is appropriate for Sonic. But yeah, they're fighting. The president's ship kind of crashes. And they're
every important character that has said a line is now in the same place.
Yeah,
basically.
I'm glad the president turned up late so he didn't have to see what everyone else was doing to his daughter, basically. But he's here now.
Yeah.
And his ship is burning up, so now, oh shit, we've got a time limit. We got to save the president. And Knuckles is failing to do it. Oh, there's also, a whack-a-mole scene, so we can set up an ending joke where after saving the day, he can punch Sonic in the face or whatever.
Also, Eggman does release 2 of his badniks at one point. One which is a hare, which is like a seeker missile, and then there's also one which is a tortoise who moves very slow.
Yeah, which is just fun. It's like, okay, how do we use this imagery of the badniks and just reincorporate them as little gadgets?
I think my favorite part is Eggman just sees it being so. It's like, oh no, another design failure. Like, he's done this several times. This isn't the first time. Like, Eggman, why the fuck are you making it?
I do like that Eggman iterates. I do like he's not a one-take kind of guy. He's like, all right, I'm back to the drawing board with this piece of shit, though. What did you expect from the tortoise, exactly?
Sure.
What did you expect?
I thought it'd be funny.
I thought it'd be
yeah.
bit.
And I want to point out, he does fucking hit Tails and blow him up.
Oh yeah, he does. He shoots that fox out of the sky as they have a bit of a dogfight. So Eggman doesn't play in this OVA. He goes for it.
Yeah. Eggman ain't playing.
Eggman ain't playing. He's in for keeps.
Yeah.
But no, there's a lot of stuff going on. But yeah, so okay, we got.
Yeah, the president. I forgot to mention the president turns up with the owl as well, because the owl's also there.
And then what does Metal Sonic do when he gets to the ship? Well, he saves the both of them. And then he falls into a pit of lava, and now Sonic is going, oh crap, I've got to save him. But the end of Terminator 2 happens instead.
Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah,
dun.
and Metal Sonic says like the first lines that he does the entire thing, doesn't he? And he does have the Microsoft Sam voice, which is good.
He says in a very high-pitched voice, there is only one Sonic, and then he burns up.
And he doesn't even do the thumbs up.
Yeah, no, like... Or like, not even
very
fun
sharp
stuff.
No.
Yeah, I think it does feel like, okay, we've got to rapidly close this up. We had 54 minutes of animation budget, and we have used it all.
And so they're all just standing around and talking, and Eggman basically says, well, don't worry, I can build another Metal Sonic because I have your DNA on this Sony mini disc. Oh,
Sonic.
What's that? The tortoise from yeah. Oh shit! And it
Sonic,
blows up him in the disc.
Sonic, I'm gonna make an AI model of you.
Knuckles smacks Sonic for hitting him in the head earlier, and everyone runs into the camera. Sonic the Hedgehog and credits, and it closed its loop. This is, it's a good thing these 2 episodes formed a nice little narrative, even if, looking back on it. This is a really fun, just little kind of 90s Sonic artifact, but that's kind of really all it is. I don't think this is something that would play to anyone who wasn't around at the time, or just really doesn't give a shit about old Sonic.
I mean, we don't have to go into this too much if you don't know, but what is kind of the sort of the feeling around this? Like, is it still treated as kind of an object of respect?
I think, from my understanding, it's not like the mid-aughts where this was like a fucking really big thing amongst Sonic fans of, oh no, this is when we were on top, something like that.
Yeah.
It's more just like, yeah, this is fun, this is cool, we really like this, but it's kind of faded into the background of discussion. I think the series getting movies that have done well have kind of, even if this is, this is Japanese, this is something animated there, and this was of the time when Sonic was on top of the world. Yeah, it doesn't really get as much play, but it's just kind of fondly remembered.
Yeah,
I think that was... sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say, I imagine a lot of younger Sonic fans probably don't know about this, because if you search Sonic movie now, like you said, the Paramount movies comes up.
Yeah, just thoroughly supplanted what it was doing. It's cool. It's got its own unique stuff.
No, like in my mind, watching it, like before kind of watching it, and then kind of as we were in my mind, I was just sort of thinking, like, is this the peak of sort of the Mega Drive era? Like, Sonic on the top of the world. Like, this is the sort of coup de grace in regards to they made this little OVA as kind of a celebration of what Sonic was at the moment. But then at the end of it, it did just kind of feel like that was solid capital M merchandise. That is something that if you liked Sonic and you wanted like a little bit extra to sort of appreciate it, that would be fine. But like a lot of merchandise, like, yeah, not only does it not really factor into, like, it doesn't really inform a lot of modern Sonic at this point. Like, I guess if you like Mania, it might be, or if you like Generations, maybe you might get something out of it. Like, if they ever did like another Generations or another compilation game, I would like say, why don't you just throw this in as like a, oh, actually, yeah, it's because you said they can't re-release
Yeah,
this,
no.
So
I did, looking on some things, there were files from the Sonic OVA found on the Sonic Mega Collection for the GameCube, so people speculate this was going to be rolled into the Sonic, like, Mega Collection as a bonus thing, but just maybe the licensing never cleared, or they just never really got around to implementing. But yeah, no, that was probably the last chance this would have had to be introduced to a newer audience, or what, around 2003, and didn't really pan out. So it kind of, I don't want to say languishes in obscurity, because it's not languishing, it just is what it is. It's a piece of merchandise made for a time that's passed by.
It kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about the fact that I've never really been, it's more been through knowing you two that I've kind of learned all these bits of Sonic stuff. And this kind of feels like indicative of that. Like, this almost kind of feels like something you can have in your back pocket, almost as a bit of a, almost like a proof of membership of the Sonic fan club, of just being like, oh, did you know that they did this animated film, which it looks like the beginning of Sonic CD, but it delves, it's kind of like an expanded version of that because they fight Metal Sonic and stuff like that.
Hey, do you want something that is kind of Sonic CD the movie? There you go. But instead of Little Planet, it's Planet Freedom, and it's got kind of its own art style, which is kind of cool. It's kind of a bit, I mean, it's a bit of an amalgamation, it feels like, of like little elements of Sonic just kind of compressed together, which is going to be, in a way, it is like, it's very different, it's very far removed, but it is kind of templative. It is the template that Sonic would follow of, you do a little bit of pandering, you introduce a few unique elements on top of it, and that's your Sonic Sunday. That's your fucking... You put a little bit of something new on it, which in this case is Planet Freedom and its interpretation of Metal Sonic. But then, hey, you've got zones, spikes, you've got a spring appears at one point, you've got a mention of the Badniks.
This feels like, I'm sure that when this came out in 96, this just felt like a small victory lap. I feel like this probably would have been way more like celebrated probably in that weird era post 06 where Sonic fans weren't quite sure what the series was. And you had a little bit of the, again, you had the Destructoid lot saying, well, Sonic was always shit. But then you also had the people who are going, no, why don't we go back more to the Mega Drive stuff where they kind of figured out, which is sort of how we ended up with Sonic, how they ended up just kind of retrofitting Sonic 4 from a mobile game into this weird sort of like retro revival, which it isn't really. But you could see like the Sonic OVA at the time being like, this is a canonical movie. This should be shown at Cannes sort of thing. This is now where it's like, because Sonic has gone through all these different identity changes and people I think are a bit more savvy about franchise stuff to the extent of, yeah, they realize that there's Sonic Boom, which is different to the Sonic Paramount movies, which is different to Mania, which is different to Frontiers and stuff. And they're all kind of fine with that. And this just kind of then becomes this sort of snapshot of a era of Sonic that doesn't exist as it used to, but is still around just through kind of nostalgic references that they do in stuff like Superstars and Mania now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? It does remind me, because we can circle back to the first 3 episodes, but it does kind of remind me of kind of like how Transformers works. Like Transformers as a series has had like a lot of like funny enough, it also has its old animated movie that got supplanted by the previous one. But, and it kind of has, like you said, like, builds on it. It does change a lot, too. Just
Yeah, no, it's funny. One of my earlier notes, which is a weird thing, was like, we could kind of talk about how Sonic is kind of like Batman, and you got all these interpretations of the character.
Yeah,
no, it
or
is,
Spider-Man,
but it is
exactly.
really just kind of closer to Transformers in what this is like a little piece of franchise merchandise.
Yeah. And it's
I
like,
mean, that's the thing, though, is technically you could argue that anything that isn't the original source material, like in Batman or Spider-Man's case, the comics, everything technically counts as merchandise because it's all meant to feed into selling the idea. Well, it's meant, I guess in like Spider-Man's case, the idea was it was meant to sell Spider-Man comics, but at this point, that's kind of the opposite. The comics are there to sell the film. It's just kind of meant to sell the idea of Spider-Man, the Spider-Man franchise. You like it, I guess.
Yeah. It's weird nowadays. Whereas it's funny, they've already announced there's odd things going on with the Sonic 3 movie at the moment, which one thing I saw which was like, oh, I can't be hyped for Sonic anymore because they haven't put out a trailer. And it's like, do you actually enjoy the films, or are you just here to like just be part of a hype cycle? Like,
and a lot of, that's a lot of
like,
people.
Yeah, I know, it's so weird to me. It's like, if I know I want to watch something, I'm not watching trailers. I'm like, okay, cool, surprise me totally. I don't want any preconceptions. But it's like,
what if your job though is reacting to the trailer and then putting that on YouTube?
I think this was just like a Twitter rando. Is like, are you just
okay?
Do you just exist to be excited for things rather than to enjoy it? I don't know.
I mean, I think that's kind of part of just the general movie stuff based on
movie culture now.
But
yeah.
On the other hand, they've announced like, oh, we're going to do we've got Sonic 4, like we're getting that ready, and then we're going to do Sonic 5. I'm like, I can't give a shit forever about this. I'm not.
Oh yeah, no.
I think that's the thing as well, is that like we're sort of the generation, and this was something that Gen X has kind of pioneered. It's just like, you don't really have to put your toys away if you don't want to. As a 30-year-old man, you can go and see the Sonic movie and not feel embarrassed about it. It's fine. But there will get a point where it's just kind of like, because I feel like with Mario at this point where it's like, I saw the Mario film and I thought it was okay, but it's like, I'm not like fanatical about it. No. I just kind of like the games more from just like a pure mechanical standpoint. Like to me, like getting a new Mario game is like filling out the daily crossword in the New York Times.
I'm not going to invoke a name, and I'm sorry, but you're not movie bobbing it. You're not like, oh, thank God, a cultural movement.
I'm not getting paid for it for a start, so yeah, I can't really movie bob it.
I don't know if Movie Bob is getting paid for it anymore.
I guess Movie Bob isn't getting paid either now. But I think that's just sort of, and I feel like you and me are very, or even Anne Swede as well, we're very similar in that we don't really get to that level of fanatical with stuff, so we can't quite understand that process of saying that, because technically I grew up during the quote console wars, but it wasn't my fucking Vietnam. It was more like the Iraq war, where it was like, well, people are fighting these overseas, but I don't really have to worry about this.
I feel like the difference is we had friends growing up while the console wars were happening.
Yeah, that is true. And also I think as well, it was that for us the console wars was basically like, it was like the end of World War II after Berlin had been captured, where it's just like, well, Sony's kind of just won this, so like, we don't really have to get.
Like, I remember when I first heard of the console war was literally through Americans on YouTube.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. It's and that goes all the way into what we were saying about Sonic and like how much of his identity has been informed less by like Sonic himself, but like even the people who played those games, and the quote, like, internet scholars and the guys who remember it so you don't have to, taints quite a lot of that. Because like in your video that you're writing, I mean, Sonic 06 is just so much that it is. There's people who have never played that game, but they don't need an opinion on it.
Basically, a lot of YouTube discussion, a lot of fandom discussion is narrativizing. Like, we've got to draw up what was the story of this, and it's broad strokes, and it's often like, hang on, no, that's not quite it. Because, I mean, we experience it. We talked about it earlier with like, a lot of British Sonic fans, it's more kind of like 8-bit, which isn't entirely true. Like, I was in 16-bit, but then you go on YouTube and it's like, because most YouTubers are American and Nintendo did well in America, they tend to globalize the story of, oh, Nintendo was on top during this time, which is like...
I mean, we were talking about it earlier. Literally earlier, I did give the narrative of how did Sonic the Hedgehog get created, and it was still... It technically had a Nintendo focus too, but that is literally just because that is how...
Yeah,
that is the history of it,
competition.
You know?
And like, even going over the bag, like a detail you didn't bring up, like about Sonic's design, which was, it was either Yuji Naka or Naoto. I think it was Yuji Naka, but it could have been Naoto Oshima, probably Naka. But they were playing, you know, Super Mario Bros. And he would play World 1-1 over again. He was like, well, this is, and he was like, well, this is fun, but I just kind of want to get to the later levels. But he kept playing World 1-1 over and over again, and he was getting better. And he was like, you know, we should make a game that's all about just getting better at the level, you know, in a weird way. And
Interesting.
That informed Sonic's design. Well, speed was the key. It's like, how fast can I beat this level? So it's like, okay, how do I make getting faster more upfrontly fun? Is part of Sonic 1's like design philosophy. Like how, so besides the pinball elements, it's like interpretive moveset, but an interpretive moveset where through proper application you can go faster than perhaps the game is suggesting, whereas Mario 1 is kind of capped at a speed.
Mario is very digital feeling, whereas weirdly enough, Sonic feels like there's almost an analog element of, you feel like you can break the game, and that kind of gives you that little feeling of mastery where, of course, it's always like Sega knows that you can do this, but that's become like an identity of Sonic all the way through, is that, like, you know, you watch people play Adventure and they're breaking it wide open. And that even goes into the fact that, like Mario has always been kind of a static identity. Even the time when he went on an island holiday and there was evil blue Mario who then ended up being fucking Bowser Jr., whatever with that. But Sonic has kind of just been lots of different things, and a lot of that has been also influenced by, you know, love him or hate him, the Sonic fans who, on the simplest level, might just be like, I like this interpretation of Sonic that he eats vegan chili. You know, he doesn't eat meat in his chili and he eats vegan hot dogs. Or going all the way over to, you know, well, I have this 500-page world Bible for my version of Sonic, which is essentially fetish fuel. And it's like, cool. Cool that this franchise can lead in all of these different directions.
And Sega isn't going to please 25% of you.
Oh, no.
Which I think is a blessing and a curse. But
yeah, exactly. You know, it's as they say, if you try and make something that appeals to everyone, it will appeal to no one. So.
Which is why instead you have 15 different Sonics, and all of them appeal to someone.
and every few years you go, oh, should we bring this guy back? Absolutely to the extent of they've brought Shadow the Hedgehog back now.
Yeah.
And they've given him Venom-style flesh powers.
After years of going Shadow, like basically turning Shadow into Vegeta, it's like, okay, we'll let Shadow be Shadow again, and a little bit more.
Yeah, now he's Venom.
It's gonna be mad. It's gonna be curious.
Again, I still think of that. I still think of that tweet where somebody just took the screenshot of the end of that Shadow trailer where he has like demon wings made out of like spawn, you know, Venom black goo. And the guy I think he was my age or maybe just a little bit younger, and he was just like, can we all just admit this image goes fucking hard? And it's like, he's a stuffed animal with tentacles.
Like, I like it. I'm kind of ironically curious, but we do not have to agree it goes hard, okay? We don't have to be.
Yeah, no, when you go to the polls in November, remember, you don't have to agree if it goes hard or not.
Look,
just remember we're all part of the human
It's funny,
race.
We're going to all appreciate it on some level, ironically or otherwise, but I am not going to be in your Twitter comments going, yeah, this goes hard, because I don't know, I've got some level of dignity about me that kind of restrains such a response.
Oh, but you could also say it, and people on your Twitter will go, well, Snake's a funny guy, so he's obviously being ironic.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, you could do Schrodinger's douchebag.
I've worked out this level, but I'm not groping people. I'm not like the OVA like that, but on this other level, between funny and serious.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Schrodinger's douchebag, innit? Where it's like, if people call you out on it, you just say, I was just joking. And if people agree with you, you go, yeah, I'm right.
There we go. I've done it. I've cracked
There we
go.
That is the Sonic Hedgehog, I think, in a nutshell, really.
That's it.
Where do you think he... Do you think they'll ever do another OVA like that? Well, I mean, that's the thing. They do animated Sonic all the time.
So
There's
you
like
get
Netflix
little
series.
bits, yeah. They've got Prime. Unleashed had a couple of short films made for it, which are kind of like,
Tyson Hesse does like every time a new like classic 2D style Sonic comes out, they do like kind of throwbacky animations with that, like they did with Mania and Superstars.
Yeah, true. Let's see now. There was
in
the
fan
Sonic Boom
projects,
cartoon.
Ryan Drummond came back for an ongoing Sonic audio play, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. Oh.
But it's funny as well. You get like Sonic actors getting mythologized, but I don't know anyone who has kind of tried to track down Burke, the guy who did Sonic in this, and get him to do something.
I think he's just not voice acting anymore. Probably not. No. Yeah, and there's another fan project I found just searching. You know when those things like movie but reanimated.
Is
somebody doing a reanimated for this?
So the same guys who did Shrek Retold made Sonic Rebuilt, which is just this, but every few seconds is animated by somebody different.
How interesting. Do you know I did one of those reanimated projects before, but it was the Mario Brothers Super Show episode Mama Luigi.
Oh, did you work? Oh man, you did?
Yeah. Two of my shots are in that Mama Luigi cutscene. I'll point them out after this.
I think I've seen it.
Yeah, quite a few people have.
I could have had us watch Sonic Rebuilt, but I didn't.
That's fine. Well, say, how do you know what? You watched it when you were a teen. You've watched it since, and you watched it again with us.
Wee child, younger than a teen.
Do you feel your opinions have changed? Do you like it more or less?
Well, I like it a lot less, just in the sense that I can no longer be attached. Not in a like, oh, this is Drek, what was everything, but just in the sense that I'm not attached to the same childhood sense of wonder, and like as a kid, it's like this feels like this massive, really cool, like, oh my god. It's the character I like, but he's getting these really cool fight scenes. This is the best thing I've ever seen. Now it's just always like, yeah, this is a fun bit of old, like something that kids appreciate. But I can't connect to it. I can't connect to it the same way I could as a kid. Like, I'm not like bitter about it, but I just kind of accepting like, yeah, this was fun. But even early on, rewatching it is like, kind of feel on this level of like, yeah, the magic's no longer there. Oh well, it's fine. Take it for what it is,
Yeah.
It was never going to feel as
you know what? I forgot to ask you earlier, Swede, whether you had seen this before we watched it for this as well.
Yeah, I had.
Okay.
But it was many.
Do you want to give us your backstory of how you saw it before and how your opinions have changed since?
I don't recall. I just saw it. I think it was just...
saw it on YouTube.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I was going to say, did the first time you met Snake and you found out he was a Sonic fan, did he make you watch it?
I remember fucking it. It was years before that. So basically... my dad had found like a pirate site or something where I could watch a bunch of stuff. That's like,
sorry, that's just funny the way you did that.
But like, it was like really early. Where like you could just find episodes. Like that's how I watched a lot of most of the original Transformers cartoon and the original movie.
Yeah, and
in there I found Sonic OVA and I watched it then, and I really liked it back then.
Yeah,
and I would say, it's a fun little watch. It's like short, snappy.
It's okay. My review is I'd never seen this before you asked us to watch it, and I guess... So here's the thing. When we watched the Transformers films, I had seen the first one and the second one previously, but it wasn't like going back and rewatching them. I didn't feel like I had like any old memories come back. Like my memory had been completely wiped of those films, like when we rewatched them again. So it was mostly just a thing of kind of watching them in the aspect of, well, these were American action movies, and we still kind of get these now. So it was kind of interesting charting how something like Transformers sort of set the basis for where like Iron Man and like all the Marvel stuff has since come in. Whereas with this, is kind of like, well, I don't really watch OVAs and I don't really watch a lot of anime. Like outside of like one or two stuff.
You've got basically no context for it the same way.
No, I was going in completely contextless with it. And again, like I said earlier with Sonic the Hedgehog, it's only kind of recently I'm interested in him, but that's just kind of more in the... As I kind of find myself more interested in just the wider soup of games and like the history of them and like how Sonic kind of fits into that. And so and I find him interesting from the fact of what he does differently to other platformer characters, the fact that he has endured for so long. So I was mostly just watching this, just kind of with a hat on of, mostly watching it for the animation, because I just like animation, and I like kind of figuring out the mechanics of what decisions did they make here, what kind of fighter that, seeing all the sort of reference points of, again, I kept mentioning Toriyama throughout this, and it just was a fun reminder of just how many video games just like indelibly are affected by the stuff he did, to the fact of Sonic has the super mode, like Super Saiyan mode. The Dragon Balls are basically the Emeralds. The fucking title screen of Sonic the Hedgehog 1, where he's inside the ring, is just the intro of Dr. Slump, where Arle is coming out of the big ring. So kind of seeing that kind of weirdly readapted, where Sonic is inspired by Dragon Ball, and then there's this anime, which is obviously what Dragon Ball is kind of famous in. Seeing those kind of things was interesting, and I don't know, I never would have watched this if it wasn't for this, and I guess just kind of after the fact that I went, you know what, this was absolutely fine. I don't think I would probably ever watch it again, though.
Fair.
Yeah.
This is one for the old heads. This is the one for people who were there who just like this thing. It was more interesting kind of thinking about it in the wider context of Sonic the Hedgehog. I think that's why we talk about Sonic more, because when it comes to this, there's not too much trivia out there. There's a few credits that are interesting, but it's a 90s OVA animation for a franchise that was on top of the world at the time, so it's kind of just an interesting relic and an excuse to talk about Sonic, which is, I like.
If you and me, Snake, were more into fighting games, we would do this episode, but for the Street Fighter film.
Swede's about to throw it out there now that you've said that.
Oh, man.
Yes, we do want us to do another 4-hour podcast where the first 2 hours is talking about the context of Street Fighter, and then an hour is the context of why was Jean-Claude Van Damme a thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
All right. Join us next time for Uwe Boll's Dead or Alive instead.
Oh, Jesus. There we no, Snake. I thought you were going to suggest doing Uwe Boll's Postal.
Oh, good God.
No.
That would actually be my front runner for an Uwe Boll movie we talk about, because it's his best work. But, that's low bar.
Not the highest bar to clear.
That's not the high bar.
That bar is on the floor.
That bar is on the floor, and I have stomped on it a few times.
Yeah, that bar is being turned into crude oil with the dinosaur bones underneath our feet.
That bar is very lower than the German tax law, which let him make those films.
That's true. In fairness, now I kind of want to do it just because of, you mentioned that, and I go, there was weird production stuff behind that film, but we'll pop it on the list. And speaking of popping stuff on the list, I guess to wrap things up, do we want to plug anything? Snake, what, you go first. You were the person who suggested
I'll be greedy this time. And part of also what inspired me to, hey, maybe we should talk about this, was I am currently making, and it may be out by the time this comes out.
I would think it probably would be.
Playing Sonic Adventure Wrong, which this is a bit removed from that era, but Sonic has been on the mind lately, so
if anything, this fits nicely between the first Sonic Wrong video that you did, which was the Mega Drive era.
Yeah.
And then what came next, which was the 3D era.
Exactly. So when are you making watching Sonic OVA wrong?
This is it, basically.
This is it. This is what I'm calling the episode, I guess.
It's watching the Sonic OVA wrong, which is watching it with mates, chatting over it, and then spending over 50% of the podcast not talking about it.
Oh my God, almost 4 hours. We're never making.
Oh my God,
episodes.
we could have actually watched the OVA more than 4
twice.
Three
or 4 times.
In the time it takes to listen to this episode.
I think I joked about that when we were watching it. It's like you could watch it forward, reverse, then forward again in the time you would say to do the episode. Yeah.
Here we are. You made it come true, and then one more on top for good measure.
Yeah, once more in the original Japanese dub.
I'm playing Sonic Adventure Wrong, where I'm going to be taking a look at the way we talked about Sonic games through the Adventure era up to 06, and kind of today, now that it's kind of back in the spotlight, though, frankly, kind of just lingered there for a long time in discussions.
Yeah.
And I've kind of cannibalized several things that I was gonna that are going to come up in the episode. So I'm all right with that, though.
No, that's no problem at all. Sweet, what about you? Anything you'd like to point people towards? Or?
Fuck, I'm trying to think. I should have thought of someone to plug. There is a little unknown YouTuber. His name is Hot Cider.
Oh my god, I've never heard of him.
Yeah.
Do you mean Games D?
Yeah, true. Games D.
Do you mean Video James? Should we go and watch it?
Video James.
Yeah, do you mean Video James?
Yeah. No, Board James. Yeah, Board James.
Sweet, have I sent you both of you, have I sent you the Video James channel before?
I believe so.
Yes,
ages ago. Yeah.
You have.
Yeah, he's the guy who does all the shorts about how to trick genies into giving you an infinite wish.
The fascinating guy who that is the most pigeonholed a man has ever been in reality.
That is my favorite thing about YouTube is you find somebody who pops off and then you just see the moment that they become I think about that all the time with Brutal Moose, where he used to be a pro Jared style retro game reviewer. And then one episode, he ate the Sonic curry, and it popped so fucking hard that he has now become the shitty frozen food, microwave food guy.
Yeah, I just remember. And then he did a throwback video to his Pajama Sam stuff, and so many people were wondering, what is this?
Why aren't you eating anything? That's why I'm here.
That's the fun part about YouTube. Sometimes someone sees success and they sprint after it in a different direction.
And you know what? It's been like that forever. As the story that I like to tell you about DC Comics and the fact that there's so many apes in them. Because once in the 1930s, they ran a DC comic which had an ape on the cover.
Oh, yeah.
And it did so phenomenal. It was like a fluke. It did so phenomenally well. And they couldn't figure out why. They figured it must have been because of the ape. And so from then on, they just started putting apes in comics all the time.
Yeah,
and they'd all been successful as well. People love apes in comics.
But yeah, wasn't it they had to just stop and ration out the apes because everyone wanted to
they didn't want to. Yeah, the heads of DC said, don't oversaturate the apes. We have to ration them out.
There's two things in this world you've got to ration: sex and apes.
Sex and... God. I think Jordan Peterson said that once, but we're not going to get into that.
And then he cried afterwards.
Anyway, James Gunn. That's how you make your DC movies successful.
Give an ape a gun. Give a man a fish, and he'll say, give an ape a gun. And I'll tell you what, everyone's eating.
Remember the fucking Plants of the Apes movies are still going. And
I saw the newest one of those. You know what? I'm gonna. I guess I'll recommend that that is a film that I would recommend over any of the other films I've been recently watching. But sure, the new Planet of the Apes film, it's okay. And I'll say this: the guy who directed it's doing the Zelda film soon, and if it's going to be anything like the Ape film, I think it will be okay with a small O.
That's what a crossover! If the Legend of Zelda movie is anything like the new Planet of the Apes film, be okay. With no context for what the new Planet of the Apes film is like, that is the bizarrest estimation for okay, all right.
That does feel like the cover of a DC comic with an ape on it.
What, an ape that's been sent back to fantasy Europe? Oh, yo, what if they did a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, or what's the film about the teenage kid who gets sent back in time to the court of a kid in King Arthur's Court? What if they did that, but it was a gorilla?
That'd be good. Just a gorilla.
What if they sent a gorilla to the court of... And, obviously, it can't talk or cry. It is just a gorilla.
Imagine if the gorilla just pulls the sword out of the stone and, shit.
Yo! And then it just goes on a sword rampage. And it's just Guinevere, I don't know what to do. He keeps throwing barrels at the peon.
King Ape Fur.
God, that'd be so sick. It's just the film
Sweet, that's really good.
Oh fuck! You're not taking it from me, viewer.
What did you say?
Copyright office tomorrow.
King Aether.
Oh, King Aether, that is good. Oh, going bananas in Camelot. Yeah.
I need to write this down.
I just like the idea that it's Cocaine Bear, but they've spent all the money on like, I guess they've gone to Mexico or whatever to find a castle to shoot it like they did with Army of Darkness, but it is just a medieval fantasy film. But the concern is a gorilla's there. And maybe it was a gorilla sent back in time, or maybe it's just a gorilla that they brought over from Borneo or something.
Like the gorilla getting sent back in time is just extraneous at this point. That's just questions.
Well, it's because the time travelers, they had to test, whether it was safe. So they sent a gorilla back in time, but they accidentally overshot it and they don't know where it ended up. But the gorilla actually got sent back to medieval. They got sent back to the time of King Arthur in medieval.
Is that gonna be like a present day subplot? They're trying to go through history, trying to find.
So what you find out halfway through the film is that one of the humans from the future who got sent back in time has actually been looking for the ape, but they've been trying to blend into medieval society so they don't get burnt as a witch, but they're trying to track down the ape. So
at one point he might just spot the ape, and then from beneath his peasant's cloak he pulls out a tranquilizer and takes aim at the ape.
A tranquilizer? No, he pulls out like a Mac 10. He's packing heat.
Oh, he's not like there to reclaim the ape. He's like, I've got a fucking.
He realizes that the ape can't. This is the thing. He realizes it's a one-way journey, but he was willing to sacrifice it to stop the ape.
Oh, 2 bullets.
He brings a history book with him and he shows them how the timeline has changed, and there's an etching that what's that painting called where it's all the Normans invading?
You're talking about the Bayeux Tapestry.
Yeah, it's the Bayeux Tapestry, but the ape is king. It's a really crude drawing of the gorilla as a king. And they're like, if we let this future go ahead, Europe just is not the same.
I do also just want to point out that on the Bayeux Tapestry, the king has an arrow in his eye, which would be really funny with a fucking gorilla. With an arrow.
Oh, the gorilla's holding the arrow. Yeah. He was able to interject it.
Oh my God.
But yeah, he brings back a history book and he's showing that pages are fading away in real time, Back to the Future, because the ape is changing the timeline too much by being a gorilla. Which is if you've listened to this, if you've
scene, but not the NASA scene, the fucking government spooks, CIA, Pentagon scenes. But yeah, they're all just seriously discussing this ape is tearing history apart.
Yeah, no, it's like the scenes from Jason Bourne where they're discussing him. But you have a look in they notice that things are disappearing from the office. The coffee machine disappears because they weren't able to discover coffee beans because of the gorilla.
Oh yeah, the gorilla stopped going to North America.
Their pens turn into quills because because the ancestor of the ballpoint pen inventor got killed by the gorilla in his rampage. So they realize that it is a genuine ticking clock situation, but because the timeline takes a while to update, they can see it happening in real time.
We need to get back there. We need to kill King Apefer.
We do. We need to go back and we need to stop the gorilla who's traveled back to. So if you're a film producer and you've listened to this entire 4-hour podcast, please reach out to me over on Twitter at HotCiderHG.
Reach over to me for the name.
I mean, these two are going to wake up tomorrow morning, which gives James the advantage of time zones, and they're going to rush to a copyright office, so get up early.
Michael Bay, you're adapting Skibbity Toilet. If you're looking for your next big hit, Time Gorilla. That's Gorilla 1000 AD. There we go.
A gorilla in King Arthur's court.
A gorilla in King Arthur's court. Hit us up. We think it's a good idea. And if it works, maybe we could send gorillas back to other time zones.
Night gorilla.
Maybe
Oh my god!
revolutionary.
One where he gets sent back to ancient Egypt, and it's just like the Sphinx, but with a monkey's head.
It's the chocolate gorilla that where it's a sitting chocolate gorilla that they put in the hot milk.
Yeah,
the Sphinx just looks like a sitting gorilla now. God.
Change the world. Goodbye.
Yeah, the final trailer line is they're changing the world one gorilla at a time. There we go. Goodbye.
Yeah, well, goodbye. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. This podcast has been made possible by Daniel Champion, Dylan Robinson, Jesse Garasha, Kevin from Pixellit, Mouse, Twyla27, Valerie B, VG, and the Hot Cider support tier. If you'd like to help with the production of episodes and gain access to extra content, consider supporting over at patreon.com/hotcider. That's HOTCYDER.